Hello. Hi there. It's me. The one they call Flawless Faye. I hope everyone is having a lovely day thus far. We have some important things to take care of today. Wouldn't you know it? Yeah, that's because Gideon the Ninth fucks severely. It's a really good book. The Locked Tomb series is really good. All right, my lovelies. Okay, okay. We have a lot to get done today. We have so much to get done today, y'all. So, I think we should probably just jump straight into it. I had things that I kind of wanted to talk about, but like not very different Gideon there. Communal good girl. Gideon the Ninth is a notable lesbian. Not Victor Gideon either. Not that one either. Different Gideon. This Gideon's a woman. She's a woman and she's gay for a necromancer who she also hates. So, my lovelies, before we get into the toxic Yuri, it's very toxic, yes. Um, Before we get into the audiobook ASMR proper, where I will be reading you my old Arknights fanfic while doing some light page turning and paper handling ASMR. Before we do that, we have a different task. Okay? Tapping my mic in anticipation of this different first task. Okay? Does the necromancer like her back, though? I mean, do you want spoilers? Um, they're both gay, I'll tell you that much. They are both lesbians. And the truth is, hatred and love are very close feelings. So, considering how much they are constantly obsessed over how awful the other person is, they're pretty good together. Um, Now, what we have to do before we start the ASMR proper, okay, is we all collectively have to design an emote, which I will then commission an artist to make. All right. This is the one of the milestones that we hit during the SummerSlam. So we get to do this together. So the first thing I'm going to the first thing I'm going to ask is for basic concepts, right? We're gonna start with basic concepts. So I'm gonna make a poll. All right, what kind of emote? The first one on there is hog. Okay. Do we? I'm only putting one hog option on this poll. Okay. We can establish the particulars of hog later. Okay. Assuming hog gets chosen. We have hog. Now hold on a second. Bat Rav is something that Lynn's already doing. Come here, Rav. Just ready, my son. Hmm? Kiss for the boy. Let's see. Faye Hug sounds adorable. I like Faye Hug quite a bit. Did we hit the Discord goal? Yes, we did. Yes, we very much did. Um, that has not yet been made. I'm taking these milestones one at a time. And I've never made a Discord server before, so we're gonna take a bit, but it will happen soon. Um okay. I'm gonna put Rav emote as an option. Just generic an emote involving the cat. And if that wins, then we can discuss the particulars. Okay? The Bwee? Oh, thank you so much, Sky. Thank you for the sub. Faylaf. I'm down with Faylaf. We have one last slot in this particular poll. Why are you staring at the ceiling, Rev? Is there... Oh, because there's a spider up there. There's a spider up there, and he would very much like to attack it. I feel like we have enough seal phase. We have two separate seal fae emotes. I kind of like Fae Panic. So, those are our initial options, okay? I'm gonna start the poll, and then I'm gonna step away for half a second so I can get that spider in a cup. Get it out of here. I'll be right back. You all just vote on the poll. I return, my lovelies. I return. We have not started reading yet, no. We're handling one other little bit of business before we start reading. Oh, interesting. I expected the hog to be dominating the poll, considering how obsessed with hogs you all are. Vampire ASMR this week was peak. I was pretty proud of it, yeah. It was actually a request. It was a request, and it was a very fun one to fulfill. I really enjoyed it. Phrasing? If you think that wasn't deliberate, you don't know me. That's just who I am. I, for one, love hog. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Gotta be one of my favorite foods, you know? I just really love hog in my mouth. Upvote. Thank you. Thank you. Pretty proud of that. +2. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You know, I actually I don't think I've ever gotten a +2 as a streamer before. I don't think anyone's ever just said +2. So basically I win. Okay. Faye Hug. Faye Hug. Now, what are the parameters of Fae Hug? Okay, give me one moment. I'll give Rav his smooch, but there's something I have to do, and I'm really terribly sorry about this, okay? We're making some changes around here. We're making some changes. All right? Let's see. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There we go. I've made a change. Rav Smooch can only be redeemed once every 45 minutes now. I'm gonna give him a smooch real quick, but it's happening. You can't keep forcing me away from my chair. And he's so tired and small. Oh my goodness. My throat is displeased. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Oh, Mr. Rav. There we go. Alright, I've given him smoochies. He needs his smoochies, but he also needs his rest. Oh, he is apparently quite content to be held like a baby right now, though. He's totally chill with it. Okay, bud. Are you so nice and cozy right now, Rev? Oh. There we go. There we go. Oh, oh, Mr. Little Man. He is pretty desensitized to a lot of things, so he's usually pretty willing to let you kind of just ragdoll him around. So. Okay, my lovelies, we're gonna make another poll. Are you ready? We're making a second poll. Stay calm, but we gotta do it. Second poll is who am I hugging? If we're doing a Fae hug emote, who does the Fae hug? We could do Stumblin'. We could do Rav. I'm gonna add an option of my own. I could be hugging Blaha. Hugging Body... Body Biter doesn't have a design. We don't know what she looks like. Can put a hog on there, sure. As far as chat goes, how do we want to depict chat? A pixie? Just a little pixie? Okay. Okay. Those are some solid options. Chat is trans-colored. Mm-hmm. Just in my heart. That's a true fact about chat. My lovelies, you are more than just hogs. I promise you're more than just hogs. You're capable of being more than hog. You have a strong showing for Blaha right now, huh? You can be hog. I just feel like not everyone in chat is like, do you all feel hog? If you don't want to be more than hog, then you can be hog. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I should not have cast any judgment on you all for just wanting to be hog. How can I be affirming about this? Like, um, you all are such a good hog. You are really good at sniffing out truffles, and you look really cute when you're taking a dust bath. Do hogs take dust baths, right? They do that. You're such a precious, incredibly large, quadrupedal, invasive omnivore. You, uh, literally feral hogs are invasive. It's just, that's just a literal, actual, true fact about feral hogs. I'm trying to be affirming. If you want to be a feral hog, then you have to accept that you're kind of an invasive species. In the United States, yes. Is a hog and a pig the same thing? Yes, sort of. You get feral hogs when a pig escapes and goes feral. So, so yeah, basically. Blaha. You, my dear chat. Well, no, I'll be hugging Blaha. You can also hug Blaha, though. Just in your heart. So, are there any other... Let's see, what other things can we do to customize this a little more? We have Faye hugging a Blaha, right? Is there anything else you would like to... Do we want to make the Blaha trans color? Because we can totally do that. Trans color Blaha. Okay. 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 Then I think that settles it. The new emote that I'm going to commission is going to be me hugging a trans pride colored Blaha. Oh, on the subject of flawless Faye Blaha, that is not a thing that exists, but it reminded me because I was thinking of VTuber merch. Big news. Big news about the SummerSlam now that it's wrapped up. We, my lovelies, our collective efforts, we won the Minecraft build competition. Technically there were 2 winners, but we were one of them. Chat, we were one of them. We did it. It was amazing. Hog Rider go, yes. Hog Rider won. So, you know, I got a little $25 Steam gift card. And also the participants in the SummerSlam got to participate in a raffle, like all of the streamers who did it. And so we got to sign up for a raffle, and I've never won a raffle before, but I won the raffle. So I'm getting a free water bottle with all of V Prisma on it. V Prisma are the folks who were in charge of the team I was on. So I'm very happy. Very happy. Call me Hog Rider the way you ride hog, which I also do. It's a good time. Okay, my lovelies. Okay, okay, okay. I believe with that taken care of, without the tiniest bit of further ado, we should probably get started on the main reason you're all here for stream today. And oh god, I forgot to turn off ads for this video. Hold on a moment. We cannot allow ads to interrupt our ASMR. We must not. Time to read peak fiction? We'll see. I mean, I enjoyed writing this. Fanfic is fun. I have dismissed the ads and told them to screw off. So hopefully there won't be ads, but there might be. I might have been too late to properly disable them. But anyways, here's what we're gonna do, okay? Here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna go onto my Scribble Hub page, and I'm going to pull up a Fluff and Garbage. And we're gonna go ahead and read some Arknights fanfic. Can someone give me the Arknights crash course? I know less than nothing about it. So fun fact, I first got into Arknights by reading a piece of Arknights fanfic that a friend wrote. And I tried my very best to write this in a way that is readable without prior knowledge of Arknights, similar to that fanfic that I read. If you have any questions about anything in particular that's going on, then feel free to ask, all right? But I'm gonna do my best to explain things if they become relevant, okay? So, I'm also going to, you know nothing of Arknights? It's a pretty fun gotcha. It's a pretty fun gotcha. One of my favorites. So I'm going to be playing around with, and you know about Enfield? I mean, Enfield is just the world of Arknights, but in the future. So, well, sort of. The world that Arknights Enfield takes place on is a different planet, but it is the same setting. So, I'm going to be flipping through a little book that I have here while I record this, while we stream today. You've seen a lot of Yuri of Arknights? That's because Arknights is a very Yuri-ful game. Alright, my lovelies. A Fluff and Garbage by Ashlyn Flagg, which, for those who are maybe new, might not be aware, is my old pen name, which I still write under sometimes. FG-1, Emergency. I woke up to something hitting me in the face. Ordinarily, this would be cause for some concern, but by this point, I'd gotten used to it. My roommate, Haley, had decided the most efficient way to wake me up was a sudden pillow to the head. As a result, anytime there was some emergency or anything that required my immediate attention, she'd go to the living room, grab a pillow off the couch, and fling it my way. All this is to say, my reaction to the sudden assault was far from unusual. "Good morning, Haley," I half mumbled as I dragged myself up into a sitting position. MLR called. They want us by 9, fully kitted out. She was standing in my bedroom doorway, already dressed in her usual cargo pants, muscle tank, and beanie. It sounded urgent. That got my attention. There had been nothing in the forecast these last few days to indicate there was any risk of inclement weather, but if MLR was reaching out on such short notice, clearly something had happened anyway. Know what it's about? Something happened up north. Government response seems inadequate. Eric wants us to step in. She turned to leave as I rose from bed. There's food on the table. Don't take too long in the shower. Let me know when you're ready, Dan. I smiled a bit as I plodded over to the bathroom and to begin my morning ritual. Haley was always a bit gruff, but if you took the time to get to know her, it was pretty obvious she was much more compassionate than she let on. Given her history and the circumstances in which we'd met, her attitude was certainly understandable. The short woman had been curled up in an alley, her white hair matted, her skin caked with grime. There was a bullet hole in her shoulder. I tried to call an ambulance, but she begged me not to. I figured she'd been caught up in something that could have gotten her into trouble. Plenty of folks would have called anyway. Plenty more would have called the cops as well. I just grabbed a first aid kit from my car and did what I could. She was damn lucky I worked for MLR, a nonprofit committed to disaster relief, and that we required all our frontline relief workers to be trained in first aid. If she'd taken a turn for the worse, or if the injury was infected, I'd probably have taken her to a hospital anyway, but she got lucky. And in the end, she moved in with me, getting a job with the MLR on my recommendation. It was a good thing, too. As new pockets of originium began appearing around the world, as cases of oropathy, the disease originium caused, continued to spike, and as natural disasters seemed to occur more and more frequently, we needed all the hands we could get. Is the grumpy one soft for the sunshine one? Maybe. She passed through all our training with flying colors and started working alongside me within a few weeks. These thoughts kept my mind occupied as I brushed my teeth and hopped in the shower, skipping through most of my normally extensive hair care routine. I dried off as quick as I could and threw my brown hair into a messy braid once I got dressed. Some guys might think it's weird that I put so much effort into my hair, or that I preferred to keep it long, but I took pride in it as my own form of self-expression, something that set me apart. Now at least looking somewhat presentable, I hurried out into the living room, put on my boots, and grabbed my backpack. True to her word, Haley had left an orange, a protein bar, and a travel mug of coffee on the table. And I scooped them all up before stepping outside to meet her. See, I'm trying to read chat and also read the story at the same time. It's a little difficult. You ready? She was waiting by my truck, tapping her foot impatiently. Yup. I pulled out my keys, and Haley snatched them from my hand before I could react. You eat. I'll drive. With that, she hopped into the driver's seat, leaving me no time or chance to argue, and I found myself smiling again. Whatever work we had today, I knew we could face it together. When do they kiss? It'll be a bit. Be patient. Be patient. The drive itself was quiet, interrupted only by the crunch of the protein bar and the hum of the engine. It wasn't a long drive, and by the time I polished off the last bite of orange, we were pulling into the MLR building's parking lot. The building wasn't exactly huge, but it didn't need to be. We rarely met in person, and the money saved was part of the reason MLR could afford to keep us as employees rather than volunteers. As much as I loved being able to help people, I did need to eat, after all. The exterior was squat, brown, and unassuming, and today it was surrounded by more cars than I'd ever seen. Whatever happened, it looked like it was all hands on deck. And and I found myself wishing I'd thought to check the news on the way here. In any case, Haley and I hurried inside. I tossed a quick wave to Becca at the front desk before heading to the common area, the only room in the building that could accommodate this many people. We'd arrived only a few minutes before 9, and the meeting started almost immediately. Eric, MLR's founder, placed himself in the common room's center as he addressed the gathered crowd. Thank you all for coming on such short notice. The murmurs that had filled the air died down at once as he began to speak. As some of you may know, early this morning, an unexpected storm struck Michigan's Upper Peninsula. The storm spawned not one, but 2 separate F5 tornadoes. I'd like to reiterate, Michigan's rural communities were struck by 2 separate F5 tornadoes. The last F5 on record occurred in 2013. The last one to hit Michigan was back in 1956. These people are going to need all the help they can get, and we're going to give it to them. Well, damn. That explained the rush. After that, he started giving out assignments. We'd split into small teams, each assigned an area to work in, allowing us to cover a wide area while prioritizing those that suffered the most damage. And lastly, Haley, Daniel, Michael, and Jess, you'll be coming with me to Backerville. It was near the center of the storm, and one of the twisters carved a path straight through it. They'll need our help more than anywhere else. I nodded, letting determination wash over me. The MLR had the power to help people. I had the power to help people, and to me, that's what made this job worth doing. Right now, I needed to get to the trucks. Every minute counted, and we needed to get on the road as soon as possible. I keep seeing bits where, like, if I were to write this again now, is the protag Dan? Temporarily, yes. As I read this, I keep seeing parts where it's like, if I were to rewrite this now, I would do it differently. This is something I wrote back in college. So many little things I would change. As I joined the others en route to the garage, a structure much larger than the MLR building itself, leaving Haley to double-check our bags, Michael sidled up next to me. Just never read over what you write again. No, the truth is when I write something, I usually rewrite it, like, I usually reread it out loud at least 5 times before I publish it anywhere. Like, anytime you go back to old work, you'll always see things that, like, I would change this if I could. I didn't like Michael very much. He was committed to his work and he was damn good at it, but he was rude and abrasive, deliberately so. I often found myself wondering what could have possibly compelled him to get into this line of work. Hey, Danny. He punched me lightly on the shoulder. Looks like you're stuck with Haley again. Tough luck, buddy. Case in point. I'm not stuck with her. She's my coworker and my friend, and she's damn good at her job. I tried to ignore him after that, walking purposefully towards the massive truck I'd grabbed the keys for. Unfortunately, he either didn't notice or didn't care. Oh, right. You live with her, don't you? That's why she always follows you around, isn't it? Why she'd bite the head off of basically anyone else. You two probably bet. You're either going to shut up and grab our truck, or I'm reporting you for sexual harassment. Your call. Jess, the hero of the hour, had appeared quite suddenly behind us, and she did not look happy. She was only a step below Eric in the MLR hierarchy, and we all knew it. Michael didn't respond, instead sheepishly grabbing the keys she offered him and scampering off. I can still report him if you want. His behavior was unacceptable, and both you and Haley deserve better. I think I'm good for now, at least. Sounds like we need all hands on deck for this one, and unfortunately, Mike's hands are pretty useful. All right, then. She gave me a quick smile before turning away. I'll make sure he stays out of your hair. Now let's get moving. After that, it was only a matter of moments before we piled into our 2 trucks, heavily laden with food, bottled water, blankets, and everything else we could need, and drove off. We had a job to do, and if we failed, people were going to get hurt. I didn't realize it at the time, but this would be the last taste of normalcy I'd have for a long time. Y'all just keep dropping things on my head. So, as I said in the author note in this story ages ago, we're so back. Welcome to my first attempt at fanfic. The story is based off of my 2 favorite lesbians from the mobile game Arknights, as well as the story that convinced me to try Arknights, Heir Apparent by Silkweaver. It's set in the same universe as Heir Apparent and was made with input and assistance from Sil, so please go check out that story if you haven't already. It's really good, and she's planning more stories in that universe as well. Real shit, past me. Heir Apparent is still a lovely story. Silk is still an amazing author, and she's still writing more stories set in the Heir Apparent universe. They're all bangers. She sends me her rough drafts so I can be a beta reader. They're all fucking bangers. She has one that should be coming out relatively soon about the Lungman polycule. I fucking love the Lungman polycule. So, yeah, it's good stuff. It's good stuff. Of Fluff and Garbage by Ashlyn Flagg. FG-2. Unusual Circumstances. Our arrival in Bakkerville was met with eerie silence and thick fog. The town was small, and based on the research I'd done on the way in, its population was just shy of 1,000. Back in the day, it had been a thriving community centered around a local iron mine, but the mine dried up years ago, and it had been on a steady decline ever since. The storm damage was obvious. We had to clear the road of not 1, but 2 downed trees on our way in, and when we finally laid eyes on the tornado's path of destruction, my heart dropped. House after house after house ripped up from their foundations. Dozens of downed trees, cars strewn about, many on their backs or sides, rubble all around. I could hardly fathom the violence of it. Does that fog look strange to you? Eric's voice dragged my attention away from the ruins, out of my thoughts and back into the present. I nodded as I realized it did indeed look unusual. It wasn't quite the shade of normal water vapor. Something about it looked darker, and it almost seemed to shimmer in the light. It might be nothing, but I don't trust that air. Could be that the tornado caused some kind of gas leak, or maybe it just kicked some dust into the air. Either way, we ought to mask up, just to be sure. I nodded again, but Haley was looking increasingly uneasy. We should go. She was as serious as I'd ever heard her. We should leave. Now. Eric looked just as surprised as I was at her sudden outburst. Haley wasn't the type to crack under pressure, and she certainly wouldn't leave people in need without a very compelling reason. Haley, I know it looks bad, but if we don't have... It's not that. She cut Eric off, her voice just below a shout. That mist. You don't know what's in it. If it is a gas, our little N95s will be worthless at best. We can't help anyone if we're dead. Haley, I began. And what if skin contact is harmful? What if whatever it is gets in our eyes? What about open cuts? We should go. That's enough, Haley. Eric raised his voice to match hers. We came here to help people, and that's what we're going to do. You raised some reasonable concerns, so I want you all to tell me if you start feeling sick or unusual, but we are going to help these people. If you want to hide out in the trucks, you can, but I'm going to do my job. The silence when he finished was palpable, only made more so by the oppressive emptiness outside. Eventually, after a few tense moments, Haley let out a frustrated sigh. Fine, I'll do what we came here to do, but if you get sick, don't come crying to me. She fixed him with a glare that could kill an elephant, but he just shrugged it off. That mean you'll help? Haley took another deep breath, carefully schooling herself back to neutrality. I'll have a little sip of water. Sure thing. It's very toasty. Temps have been in the 90s lately, and it's only going to get higher. Haley took another deep breath, carefully schooling herself back to neutrality. Yeah, I'll help. Good. Well, we were off to a great start, weren't we? Once I recovered from third-wheeling one of the most uncomfortable conversations I'd ever had the displeasure of witnessing, I climbed into the back of the truck, grabbed my pack, and extracting my mask from within as Eric conveyed our new mask mandate to the other two over the radio. Michael sounded annoyed on the other end, but I think he heard the stern edge in Eric's voice. Any disagreement they may have had didn't last long. With our masks snugly in place, we hopped out of the trucks and got to work. Mike and Jess began setting up the pair of massive tents we'd used to shelter anyone who was injured or displaced. Eric began unloading crates of food and supplies, and Haley and I began sweeping the streets. The plan was to go door to door, telling everyone we could about the support we were offering, as well as to recruit any able-bodied volunteers we could. We only had so many hands, and with all these houses reduced to rubble, I wouldn't be surprised to find people pinned under the debris. I also brought more N95s with me, and it was a good thing I did. The residents of the first house I knocked on included an older woman who developed a severe cough only hours after the storm had passed, and many of the others were complaining of scratchy, dry throats and piercing headaches. I took a moment to remind myself to remain extra attentive to any abnormalities in my own condition. It seemed our worries were justified after all. As I continued distributing masks and coordinating my small group of new volunteers, a new worry began to creep into my mind. Why were we the only ones here? Governmental response wasn't just lackluster. It was non-existent. Normally, after a disaster of this magnitude, you'd expect at least some kind of response, but the National Guard hadn't made any appearance at all. I was beginning to understand why Haley seemed so nervous. Everything about this place felt off. The mist, the silence, the perpetual shimmer in the air. It all felt so wrong. One thing to note about Arknights is that there is an infectious mineral called originium that, if it enters your body, will start growing in you. It will start growing in your body, and it's an incurable disease that will eventually kill you, as crystals overtake vital organs. A notable thing about this particular setting, Heir Apparent, is that it's set in our real world, a real world in which the game Arknights existed, but disappeared from all app stores and emulators a long time ago. And at around the same time that happened, Originium appeared on Earth. The notable thing about Originium in the setting of Heir Apparent is that those who become infected with oropathy in this setting have a chance. It doesn't always happen. Sometimes it's the normal infection, but sometimes they have a chance to physically transform into someone from the world of Arknights and start to take on some of their memories and personality. It doesn't overwrite their previous self, but the addition of new memories changes a person. So there you have it. Another notable fact is that in the world of Arknights, there are what are called catastrophes, wherein sufficient originium dust gathered in the atmosphere can trigger natural disasters of all kinds, which causes originium to spread. It essentially seeds it around the planet. Final important fact about Arknights is that every single person in the world of Arknights is part animal of some kind or has some form of non-human trait. So there you have it. There's basically all of the relevant lore. Before I could linger on those concerns for too long, however, a peculiar sound drew my attention. It was quiet, but in the oppressive silence of this stricken town, it stood out like a gunshot. It was the barest clattering of stones, the tiniest rustle of motion, and a whimper. Without a moment's hesitation, I focused hard, straining my ears to pinpoint the source of the noise. There was the whistling wind, the volunteers' footsteps, and coming from below the roof of a collapsed house, there was a quiet, labored breathing. Quickly, I grabbed the radio off my belt as I jogged towards the pained noises. Haley, I think I have someone trapped over here. I need your help. The furry part sounds fun. Yeah. There are also vampires in Arknights. They're just a race of people. Copy that. You have your camera? There was an unusual amount of interference as she responded, but I could just about understand what she was saying. Yeah, I'm going to see if I can't figure out where they are. I took a moment to glance at the nearby street signs and rattled off the address. Once Haley confirmed she heard me and was on her way, I made my way over to the part of the building I thought the sounds were coming from, turning on my search camera as I did. Where are the vampire women at? In the world of Arknights, one of them runs the, quartermaster thing in the organization you're a part of, and one of them is also a medic. She's great. Warfrin is great. It was basically a low-res video camera at the end of a telescopic pole. Footage ran directly to a screen attached to the pole's handle, allowing me to shove it into a pile of rubble and see into places I'd not otherwise be able to reach. A better funded team would be equipped with seismic or acoustic sensors and a special type of radar as well. But we were a smaller organization, and the only acoustic sensor we could afford to bring was with Haley right now. I'd just have to make do. Researching how search and rescue is performed was really interesting for this story, by the way. Search cameras are a real thing that exist, that are used in actual search and rescue ops. So, pretty neat. Slowly and methodically, I began feeding the pole through gaps in the rubble, prioritizing those that seemed likely to connect to a void, that being an empty space that a human could survive in. On my fourth attempt, I found what I was looking for. The void itself seemed fairly spacious as far as it goes, which meant more room to safely maneuver once we got in. Where do I publish my ratings? On scribblehub.com. In the dim light, I also caught a glimpse of the person trapped inside. They seemed to be shaking slightly, either in pain, shock, or both, though it subsided ever so slightly when they noticed the camera. As I extracted the camera and rose to my feet, I called out to the person trapped in there. Hey in there. My name's Daniel, and I'm with a search and rescue team. We're gonna get you out, okay? Thought Faye would have been an AO3 head. I've considered cross-publishing to AO3, but ScribbleHub is my home. We're gonna get you out, okay? I injected as much confidence in my voice as I could muster, striving to provide what little comfort I could until I made good on what I told them. The groan that came in response sounded vaguely affirmative. I guess they heard me. That was good enough. I grabbed the crowbar I kept strapped to my backpack, and soon after I was joined by Haley, having just arrived herself. You have the supports on you, right? Yeah, hydraulic ones are back with the truck, though. We'll make do without. As Haley continued the excavation, I turned to the gathered volunteers, selecting a pair, and demonstrating to them how they could help us dig the trapped person out faster, as well as warning them that doing things wrong could trigger a collapse. Before too long, we managed to chip our way into the void I'd spotted on camera. Is the MC a guy? Not for long. She's going to transfer gender. Our target looked young, and while they seemed to be mostly unresponsive, the shuddering rise and fall of their chest meant we weren't too late. They were still breathing. Once we widened the opening enough, Haley passed me the headlamp she kept in her bag and pulled out a pair of collapsible metal supports. They weren't as strong as the hydraulic ones, but this was a fairly small house, and if nothing went wrong, they wouldn't need to support much weight anyway. Common feature in Fae writings. They were only there for if I messed up. Before I had a chance to think too hard about it, you have a lovely day, communal good girl. I dropped my backpack, put on the headlamp, and crawled into the rubble, careful not to touch anything that might destabilize the crushing mass of debris above me. When I finally reached the pinned survivor, I realized things were about to get a lot more complicated. A length of steel pipe, probably from the house's upstairs plumbing, had pierced through their lower leg, embedding itself into the ground on the other side. The blood loss didn't seem to be severe, but I didn't trust that would remain the case if the pipe was removed. I took a few seconds to figure out what I needed, then twisted slightly to look back at Haley. Some pipe has him pinned. I shuffled backward slightly, extending a foot towards her. I need a hacksaw and another support. On it. I heard Haley rummaging around in our packs before something wrapped around the tip of my boot. Be careful, Dan. I'm always careful. Slowly, cautiously, I pulled my leg towards my chest, grabbing the saw that Haley had hung from it, as well as the support she kept wrapped in paracord specifically for situations like this. I squirmed my way back towards the person's legs, finding a decent spot for the support right between them. Once it was firmly in place, I took the hacksaw and started slowly cutting through the pipe, first at the bottom, then again up above. It took longer than I'd like, but eventually it was done. With their leg now free, I repositioned myself behind them, silently thankful that this void was just tall enough to sit up straight in. I gently raised them into a sitting position, looping both of my arms around their shoulders and using my right leg to raise theirs above the ground. It'd be bad if that pipe dragged or caught on anything on the way out. Once I was fully in position, I began to inch backwards, pushing hard with my one free leg. It was a slow and arduous process, and by the end I was sweating bullets, but eventually I got them out. That was exhausting. When it was over, Haley gave me a few seconds to catch my breath before she practically dragged me to my feet. She had a stern look in her eye as she did. I'm going to carry them over to the tents. You're going to swap with Jess. I coughed slightly, and a brief moment of alarm flashed across Haley's features. I'm fine. I'm just a bit winded. Dan, you can hardly stand. Go back to camp, get a juice box and some trail mix or something. There'll be plenty of work to do there anyway. She was already scooping up the unconscious person. I was intimately aware of the tone she'd just used. It was her, "There is nothing you could possibly do or say that would have a chance of changing my mind" voice. Fine, I'll take a break. Just promise you'll call me if you need me. Of course. The corners of her lips tugged upwards ever so slightly, the closest to a smile she'd usually get. But we both know I won't need you. With that, she marched away, and I turned to the small crowd of volunteers. We couldn't waste time, and they needed direction. Keep knocking on doors. Let people know we're here, and that we can help them. If you find someone who's injured, take them to us if they're safe to move. If not, send a runner to the camp, and one of us will come over. Same if you find someone trapped. Digging folks out of rubble is wildly dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. Don't try it without us. With our orders received, the volunteers got to work, and I hurried to camp, and I hurried to catch up with Haley en route to our camp. It didn't take long to get back, and from that moment onward, my day was fairly uneventful. Admittedly, my throat felt a little raw, but it was probably just from exertion. Once I spent some time in the truck, enjoying my well-earned lunch, I felt much better. I spent the rest of my day helping Eric finish setting things up, while Mike took care of the person I'd rescued. Say what you will about him, but the man was a good medic. It was a good thing, too. He ended up with a few more patients by the end of the day. When night finally fell, I rolled out a yoga mat in the back of one of the trucks, crawled into a sleeping bag on top of it, and sank quickly into an exhausted sleep. The humble throat tickle. FG-3. First signs. Sorry, Provence. I think I must have misheard you. Eyjafjalla seemed particularly embarrassed, but unfortunately, I knew she'd heard me correctly. Did you say you took up modeling to be a better catastrophe messenger? I nodded, trying to keep my embarrassment from showing. I'd only just returned to the Rhodes Island landship recently, but apparently the ad I took part in had already been released. Plenty of the other operators had seen it already, and when lunch came around, they had questions. I did. I tried not to look at Earth Spirit, the barely contained glee in the Capernae's woman. Sorry, landship? Yes, so... Minor spoilers, this is a dream that our main character is having of the life of a woman named Provence. In the world of Arknights, Terra, stationary cities do not exist in the world of Terra because of catastrophes. Originium in Terra has become so uncontained and out of control that catastrophes happen very frequently in many places. And so the vast majority of cities are situated on massive mobile land ships, so that when signs of a catastrophe are detected, they can simply drive the city away. The Rhodes Island landship is not associated with any particular nation. Rhodes Island is actually a pharmaceutical company in Arknights, and they have their own landship that travels from city to city. Anyways, I tried not to look at Earth Spirit. The barely contained glee in the Capernae woman's eyes was too much to bear. I always took the time to drag her away from her research to make sure she took care of herself, but today, of course, the ad just happened to play while we were walking towards the cafeteria. I cut a deal with an ad agency. If I agreed to model for this new hair care stuff they were making, they'd put some of their ad screens in the more isolated settlements. I figured we could use them to warn people if a catastrophe was coming. I hugged my tail to my chest. The traitorous, fluffy, oversized tail that was the reason those advertisers wanted me to begin with. It was a dumb idea, I get it. Earth Spirit's eyes softened slightly, her goat-like ears falling flat atop against her head. It wasn't a dumb idea, Provence. It was just very... you. Aya nodded along, listening closely to what we both said. The shorter Capernae was near death, after all, thanks to her oropathy. When she was certain we were both done speaking and that she'd absorbed all we said, she reached out, brushing her hand against my tail before burying it in the thick lavender fur. Your tail's really nice, too, all soft and poofy. She smiled up at me as she extracted her hand from the floof. It just means those advertisers have good taste. In spite of myself, I began to smile, and I released my tail from its death grip. It was a bit unconventional and still way more embarrassing than I'd like to remember, but if even one life was saved by those screens I'd helped put up, then it was worth it. Maybe Earth Spirit was right. I'd help people, however I could, in the ways only I was capable of. Put the microphone on your stomach and drink some water. Trust me, it'll be fun, but keep the microphone... You just want tummy rumble sounds? Perhaps not this stream. We have a different priority this stream. I'm doing paper handling and some reading. Mentally, I apologized to my tail. It was perfect and huggable, and I never should have called it a traitor. I pulled myself out of my thoughts just in time to see Scavenger, the silent fourth member of our little group, fixing Eyjafjalla with an odd look, her skinny mouse-like tail lashing slightly behind her. When she realized I was looking at her, she turned away, absently brushing a strand of white hair behind her ear. I wondered briefly what that was about, but quickly brushed those thoughts aside once I noticed the time. My break was almost over, and I had a long day ahead of me. I could talk to Scavenger later. I woke up feeling strange. Not bad, necessarily, just strange. That dream had been way too real, and for a moment, before I was fully awake, I found myself reaching for a fluffy tail that didn't exist. As I continued to climb towards consciousness, my weary confusion turned into dread. I'd heard the stories. I'd seen the news. I knew what happened in California, thousands of people infected with a deadly disease. What happened in California has to do with the events of Heir Apparent and a few other of Silk's stories. So, yeah, just plugging her story right now. Oropathy. The symptoms varied, but one of the most notable side effects of the illness was that some of the infected developed memories of a past life. Their bodies would change to match that of their other self. They'd take on new memories, and in many cases, they'd end up with animalistic traits. I knew I might be wrong. I hoped I was wrong. I'd never even seen Originium before, and I knew that those crystals were the source of the infection. All the same, that dream felt way too real. My concern only grew as I stood up and started gathering my gear. Something deep within my body felt like it had changed fundamentally. It really wasn't a bad feeling, but it was clearly different. My joints didn't ache, my muscles weren't sore. I felt agile and graceful and comfortable with my movements in a way I hadn't been before. Protagonist getting a tail and has to pretend to be mad about it. It's more the terminal disease part of it that's the issue. It's you turn into a wolf girl, but also you now have just a few decades left at most. So, ups and downs, really. My scar was gone. Years ago, I got hurt bad. My foot slipped while climbing a steep slope, and my wrist got caught on a branch partway down. The scar hadn't healed well, and years later, it still looked just as angry, just as vicious. Now it was gone. Though I hated to admit it, I needed to get checked out. And while the rest of us had plenty of first aid training, only Mike had studied as an actual nurse. Dressed, and with my mask firmly in place once again, I hopped out of the truck to go find him. The mist had faded. and it took that strange shimmer along with it. As I headed out towards our medical tent, though, I realized something else had changed too. All over the place, on the ground, on the boxes, on the roof of the tents, a thin layer of black dust had formed, interspersed with tiny black crystals. Originium crystals. They had to be. I picked up the pace. Mike wasn't alone when I burst into our makeshift medical ward. Eric and Jess were with him, talking worriedly over the person I'd rescued yesterday. They were still unconscious, but their breath seemed less strained than before. And on the whole, their condition seemed that much more stable. The others hardly seemed to notice my approach, absorbed as they were in their conversation. Damn it, Eric, we weren't prepared for this. Mike's tone was harsh and aggressive, even as he tried to keep his volume low. We need to get the hell out of here before we start sprouting rocks, too. I am not going to leave these people behind. Eric, like Michael, kept his voice down, even as he seemed ready to blow a fuse. We'll evacuate if we must, but they're coming with us, even if that means coming back a few times. None of us are showing any signs of infection, and as long as we're quick and careful, that shouldn't change. That's when I arrived, taking a spot beside Jess and trying not to look too hard at the crystalline fragments jutting out from the wounded leg of our patient. Sorry to do this to you, boss, but I think it already has. I shot Eric a tight smile as his eyes grew wide with concern. Given the fact I was masked up, I don't know that it came across all that well. Had some pretty weird dreams last night, and I'm feeling concerningly good today. Was hoping Mike could be willing to check me out, but doesn't seem like that'll be necessary anymore. How? No clue. Maybe my mask slipped, maybe I had some little cut or scrape I didn't notice, or maybe there was just a lot of dust underneath all that rubble. I don't know. I felt the weight of 3 sets of eyes bearing down on me, concern, sympathy, and a tinge of fear behind each of them. We need to evacuate, and we need to do it fast. Most of the civilians are probably already infected, but we should still try to limit their exposure as much as possible. Well, all right then. Mike and Jess, you'll be our drivers. As for Daniel, he clapped me on the shoulder as he gave me a pointed look. You and Haley can organize the civilians. Make sure loading them up goes smoothly. I'll take the acoustic sensor and try to find anyone we missed yesterday. All due respect, Eric, but I think we should swap. I jumped in before he could continue. I couldn't let him put himself at risk like that. I'm already infected, and I'm feeling stronger, faster, and all around better than I ever have. I'm both the safer and more efficient option here. For a moment, he looked like he was going to argue with me, but I think he realized I wasn't going to budge on this. Instead, he just sighed through his mask, nodding solemnly. Fine, Daniel. Be careful, though. Just because you're infected doesn't mean you get to take pointless risks. Blah, blah, blah. English, I speak it. I am so sorry that the protagonist shares your dead name. I'm so very sorry. I know, I said as I started toward the sensor equipment. With the right care, oropathy can be stalled for decades. I don't plan on wasting that. Good. With that, we got to work. It was a shame, but we really did need to pull out. Every hour we spent here could mean years off our lives, and that went doubly for the civilians we were protecting. Maybe if we had some kind of support, we could have done more, but we still hadn't seen any sign of the National Guard or any other independent relief organizations. We didn't have the numbers, so a truly thorough search was impossible. We just had to protect the people we could reach, and I'd give it my all to find as many stragglers as I could. About an hour into my search, I'd managed to find someone. They weren't pinned, thankfully, but they'd been trapped in their basement. I cleared the blockage easily enough, my crowbar giving me the leverage I needed to twist the bookshelf that had been lodged in the stairwell. 10 minutes later, I returned to the camp with the formerly trapped woman in tow. We showed up just as the trucks returned to pick up new passengers. Then, they killed the engines. Then Jess and Mike opened their doors. Then the back doors opened as well. All of the most ill, most injured, and most vulnerable of the tornado's victims were still there. They'd been brought back. Something was very wrong. As quick as I could, I brought the woman over to Eric's group of evacuees while the man himself went to check in with Mike and Jess. I did my best to keep his group organized when he left, and I tried not to get distracted by the increasingly heated whispers behind me. Eventually, my radio crackled to life as an exhausted Jess explained to Haley and I what happened. "We're calling off the evacuation." She sighed heavily, the constant stress of the last 2 days clearly weighing on her. "Turns out, the National Guard or Army or someone did show up. They're enforcing a quarantine around the storm center. They're scared. They don't want to risk us spreading this dust anywhere else." The line went silent for a bit as her words began to sink in. The nearest few people in the evacuation group overheard, and some began whispering among themselves. It was bad. I needed to control the narrative if I was going to control the situation. The last thing we needed was a panic. "We need to establish a safe zone." It was Eric talking now. "We cleaned out a lot of originium from the evacuation site, but we can do more. We need leaf blowers, brooms, vacuums, and heavy PPE. Take whatever help you can get. If we get these people active in their own survival, we can keep them organized." "Copy," came Haley's curt response. "On it, Eric. We'll figure this out." My answer followed suit. We'd figure this out. We had to. Here we have it. Yet another chapter in the books. We're almost halfway there. Hold on, before we move on, I do want you to see something real quick, okay? Okay? Give me 2 seconds. This is very important to me. Let's see. So, first off, very important. My partner is the one who made the cover art for this story. They made the cover for Of Fluff and Garbage, and they made really cute art for it. And so I need to share it with you all because it's so cute. It's so cute and it's so good. Notable thing about Provence, the wolf girl, is that her oropathy caused her to mutate and give her an extra big fluffy tail. Scavenger, who I ship her with quite strongly, is a rat girl. She's what's called a Zalak, which are rodent people. And so just give me 2 secs. Give me 2 secs. Okay. Yeah, so she's a wolf girl with a super fluffy tail that gets her sometimes confused with a fox girl. There you go. There you go. So this was the cover art that my partner made for the story of Fluff and Garbage. It's so cute, right? It's so good. It's so cute. I love it so much. Now, there's one other thing that I really, really need to show you, okay? It's super important to me. There is a piece of official, well, not art, not official art, but art made by one of the official artists for Arknights, okay? One of the actual artists for Arknights made Yuri ship art of these two. Because Scavenger canonically outright has a crush on Province. It is not verified in world whether Provence, Provence, whatever you want to call her. I go back and forth. It's not confirmed in canon whether Provence reciprocates the crush, but canonically, Scavenger is in love with her and has been for a while. um, and so one of the artists for Arknights went out of their way to draw ship art of the two of them. That is also so good. I love these two so much. I love these two so much. mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right, I'll have a sip. I'm gonna take a sec to refill my water after this chapter. But yeah, no, these two are so good together. They're so good. What you need to understand is that Arknights does have canon gay in it, which is a rarity for gotchas, but it straight up just does. It straight up just does have canon gay. So yeah, this is not official art from the game, but it is art made by one of the game's actual artists. So I think that's really neat. I love these two so much. Anyways, our main character is going to turn into the fluffy one. This will happen. Next chapter. FG-4. Official intervention. We'd been stuck here for days now. At first, everyone had been so eager to cooperate. We were all in this together. We'd take shelter at camp for a few nights, and then we'd get out of here. It'd be good food and hot showers for everyone. That didn't last. Every day we sent a runner to the blockade, and every day they'd give us the same answer. You can leave as soon as it's safe. Some folks were beginning to wonder if safe would ever really come. The soldiers themselves were friendly enough at first, but none of them were willing to disobey their orders, and when our messengers started showing their infection visibly, they weren't so friendly anymore. People were getting antsy. Some, those who still had homes to go back to, left our little camp, and the people who remained grew irritable with time. All of that's without even considering our increasingly dire food situation. We'd come here to provide aid, not single-handedly support the town's entire population for days on end. Electricity was becoming finite as well, and none of our phones could get a signal. We had no way of calling for help, and even if we did, there's no way the blockade would let anyone through. Things were really beginning to feel hopeless. Personally, I was doing my best to stay busy. There were a lot of fights to break up, arguments to resolve, and little fires to put out. When I wasn't busy with that, I continued to scour the ruins of the town. It was a fruitful endeavor at first, but as time wore on, I stopped finding people. There was only so much we could do. I knew there were people I missed, and that just kept eating at me, so I just kept drowning myself in my work. Keeping busy helped me ignore the changes, too. I tried not to think too hard about the increasing softness of my skin, my newly lavender hair, or the sensitive buds that sprung up on my chest. It's not that I hated it, not really. It was just too much to think about with everything else that had been happening. I tried to forget the dreams and visions, too. Memories of a life that wasn't mine. Nights spent under the stars, clutching my tail as I fell asleep. Always watching out for the signs of catastrophe. Watching out for the very same kind of disaster that got me into this mess. Storms and earthquakes and meteor showers spreading originium across the globe. It would have been nice if I'd known what to look out for before this happened. My encounters with the other members of MLR grew sparse. Mike got infected, and he didn't take it well. He started spending most of his time in the trucks, isolating himself from the world. Jess and Eric were busy with a lot of the same work I'd been doing, so I hardly saw them outside of meals. As for Haley, I think she was avoiding me. 2 days ago, when my hair shifted color, I sat down for breakfast like normal, and she excused herself on the spot. Since then, she'd been off doing who knows what, appearing only for our daily meetings and a few brief check-ins with Jess. Whenever I tried to talk to her, she'd get all fidgety and awkward and angry. I had no idea what had gotten between us, but I hated it. That frustration is what led me to my current course of action. I made sure nothing needed my immediate attention, sat down, and waited for Haley to come back to camp. Eventually she did, making a beeline over to Jess. The two exchanged a few brief words, and Haley left. Just like every other time before, she spoke to no one else, moved quickly, and took great pains not to look at me directly. Fortunately for her, I wasn't going to let that fly. Not this time. I popped up from my seat and began walking after her, moving only slightly faster than she was. It took hardly more than a second for her to notice and pick up the pace. Oh well. As soon as we were clear of the camp, and I was sure we wouldn't cause too much of a disturbance, I made my case, shouting from a distance. Stop running away, Haley. If you don't want to talk to me anymore, tell me that. Don't just hide from me and pretend we're okay. She froze, clenching her fists at her sides, refusing to look at me. I don't know what's going on, but the only way that changes is if you tell me, Haley. I know you don't like to, I know it scares you, but you can talk to me. Haley, whatever you're feeling, you can tell me. Please. My volume lowered as I got closer until eventually I was right behind her, trying to decide if putting a hand on her shoulder would be a step too far. We needed to have this talk, but I didn't want to make her any more uncomfortable than she had to be. Okay, real talk, Night Owl. Provence is like super femme, and Scavenger is straight up a rat, and I adore any art or any story where Provence gets to be in a dominant position over that rat, because I think it's great. There's like one artist, okay? This is a minor tangent. I physically can't show you any of their work, right? Because most of it's porn. But I need you to understand, there's this one fucking artist that for the last 5 years has drawn almost nothing but Provence X Scavenger art of Provence doming the shit out of that rat. Nothing else. And this person, because I look, you know, I'm a person who does things sometimes. I look for porn sometimes. I'll admit that fully. This person is responsible for like at least half of the Provence X Scavenger porn that exists. It's fucking incredible. I'm a huge fan. Have so much respect is what I'm trying to say. My volume lowered as I got closer until eventually I was right behind her, trying to decide if putting a hand on her shoulder would be a step too far. Yeah. As I lingered there, hands still slightly outstretched, Haley sighed in frustration before slowly turning to look at me. You're shorter now, aren't you? With a jolt, I realized she was right. Where I'd absolutely towered over her before, we were nearly eye level now. Just how much had I changed without realizing? She was watching me intently, and I found myself desperately wishing I had something to fidget with. You even act like her, you know? You always have. I feel like such an idiot for not realizing till now. Her? Haley, You're Provence, right? How? How did she know? How could she possibly know? She was human. She hadn't shown any signs of infection since we got here. Did she play Arknights or something? That had to be it, right? She must have just been a player or something before the game disappeared. You're smart, Prov. If you remember, you can figure this out. She tried to keep holding my gaze, but some of the awkwardness of the last few days seemed to remain, and she turned away, absently brushing a strand of white hair out of her face. Something about that felt familiar. That same little nervous tick. I'd seen it somewhere before. On a white-haired Zalek who looked suspiciously like the woman standing in front of me now. Surely it couldn't be. Before I could hesitate, I reached up and snatched the beanie off her head, revealing exactly what I'd expected. A pair of white mouse ears. She'd been hiding them the whole time, all these months, and I somehow hadn't noticed. Scavenger? I stared, dumbstruck. Yep. The whole time? Yep. With what appeared to be an incredible force of will, she turned and met my eyes again. She adjusted her pants as she did, reaching down the back of the thick, baggy fabric, freeing her tail. When I realized where your changes were heading, I guess I kind of panicked. I thought maybe it'd be easier to wait until you finished. I wanted us to be on equal footing and stuff, you know? I figured this could wait until the new memories had settled in. How'd that work out for you? She grimaced, slightly shrinking under my gaze. Bad. I wish you'd told me earlier. Even before I was infected, I never would have judged you for this. I know. It was just... You were nice. You are nice. And I like spending time with you, and I never really had friends before, and I was just so scared of losing that. You never had friends? Not on Earth. She caught on to my confusion and quickly clarified. In that other life, on Terra, I did. You, the old Provence, that is, kind of forced the issue. Like I said, you really are just like her. She chuckled a bit as she said it, smiling awkwardly, but smiling nonetheless. Even before she'd started avoiding me, she was always a bit closed off, so this was a welcome change. Following a sudden impulse, I stepped closer and hugged her tightly. She tensed up, but only for a moment. Afterwards, she seemed to practically melt into it, wrapping her arms around me as her tail twitched erratically. Honestly, it was kind of cute. Eventually, we both let go. I stepped back as Scavenger just stood there, kind of shuffling her feet awkwardly. After a few seconds, she cleared her throat and looked at me again. Thanks for that, Province. You have no idea how much I needed it. Of course, I smiled warmly at her. I'd needed this too. This one bright spot meant everything to me after the rest of this horrible week. That being said, are you really sure I should be using that name, though? I mean, I only have a few of her memories, and I hardly even look like her. Shouldn't I wait until I'm more her? Nope. I don't even have a tail yet, Scav. Plus, I was raised to be a guy, right? Wouldn't it be She flicked me on the forehead. Oh, what? Don't think about that stuff, okay? If you're waiting for some magical moment where all of a sudden all this makes perfect sense, don't. It'll never come. Just do what makes you happy. If you, personally, by your own free will, don't want me to call you that, then I won't. If you do, I will. Same with pronouns and stuff. You get to pick what's right for you, and nobody gets to tell you you're wrong. Well, damn. That was a lot. From Scavenger, too. She was practically pouring her heart out. I guess she'd had a similar experience of her own, hadn't she? It's like she was trying to keep me from falling into the same pitfalls she had. In that case, I guess it's okay. Just okay. Just let me give it a try. Same with the pronouns and stuff, too. I found myself wishing desperately that I had a tail to hug right now, only so I could stop fidgeting so much. I'll ask you to stop if I don't like it, but how can I know unless I try? Does this mean it's T for T Yuri? So I actually have plans to eventually someday write a prequel story of how Scavenger ended up getting changed and how she got infected and all that. And yes, it is. So one important thing about the setting is that it's not just anyone who becomes an individual from Terra. It pretty much universally happens to people who are very similar to those from Terra. Like, Scavenger's personality was already similar to that of Scavenger in the game. Our Provence in this story is similar to the Provence in game, prior to all of this happening. The Originium, like, senses something or whatever. That's lore stuff that I would have to ask Silk for more clarification on, but that is my essential understanding of it. Because Originium, canonically in the story, can record information and can remember and can download and upload memories, basically. It can and has done that. Her smile broadened somewhat, and I felt something strange in my chest as she reached out to ruffle my hair. She'd never smiled this way before. It was still soft, barely more than a smirk for most people, but it was also kind of really gorgeous. Do I have a crush on my roommate slash coworker? I filed that under to be analyzed later. Time and place, Provence. You still have a job to do. And it's nice to meet you again, Provence. I got some work to do, but we can talk more during dinner, okay? I'd really like it if you'd be there when I come clean to Eric. It might get messy. It might get messy? Oh, right. She'd been infected this whole time. Did she know the mist was Originium? I can tell what you're thinking, and no, I didn't realize. I had some suspicions, but I wasn't sure. I tried to convince you guys to leave, but you didn't listen, and I don't think telling you guys what I was and what I suspected would have meaningfully changed what you did in any way. You care too much about helping people, Provence. You always have. Now, will you be there? Okay, sure. You're not wrong. We would have stayed anyway. I sighed as I tightened the straps on my pack. I'll be there. Don't know how much support I can actually offer, though. Just show up and look pretty. That'll be enough. I spun on my heel to hide the fire that ignited in my cheeks. Time and place, Provence. Time and place. Before I had the chance to say something dumb and embarrass myself, I triple-checked my gear and walked away. Scav was right. We had work to do. All right, we are now officially past the halfway point, so I'm going to step away for a moment to refill my water real quick. So I will be back in just a bit. Hello, I have returned. Got a fresh cup of water. We're ready to lock in and finish this. Oh, quick little sippy. Quick reload. Without the awkwardness that had settled between Scav and I, weighing so severely on my mind, I was feeling much more optimistic and determined. That's not to say things were perfect. We were still trapped here, after all. But at least I could count on my roommate again. With a spring in my step, I got back to work. With Mike still sulking in the trucks, it was on the rest of us to run the medical tent. Thankfully, the local GP volunteered to help out. But there's a huge difference between working at your own private practice and running what's essentially a pop-up ER. Jess and I took turns working with him to try and make up the difference. My pursuit of and eventual conversation with Scavenger took long enough that by the time I got back to camp, it was time for Jess and I to swap. I'll go grab Rav real quick. Sir, did you knock that over? Did you knock that over to use it as a bed? Mm-hmm. You did, didn't you? Didn't you, young man? Penance for your crimes. Penance for your crimes. You will be grabbed and smooched. Mm-hmm. His right to let him sleep where he wants. He knocked a reusable grocery bag off a table and is using it as a bed right now. He has gone immediately back to the reusable grocery bag. Hey, Dr. Hendricks. How are things? I waved at him as I entered, heading towards the massive water cooler we were using to wash our hands. Oh, well, could be better, could be worse. I'm experiencing some irritation on the back of my neck, but considering the crystal that started sprouting from it, that's to be expected. Most of our patients seem to be stable, and that's the most important part. He turned towards me as I started drying my hands off. How about you, Dan? Any new symptoms or changes I should know about? I'm actually going by Provence now. She, her pronouns too. I remember being a woman back on Terra, and the more memories trickle in, the more natural that feels. He nodded his acknowledgement before motioning for me to continue. As far as my medical state is concerned, not a ton has changed. I feel almost like I'm going through a super rapid puberty in a direction I didn't expect. I've been getting dreams and visions more frequently, and every now and then I get these searing pains towards my lower back. Searing pains? And why didn't you mention this before? I expected it. In that other life, the other Provence's oropathy kind of collected around her tail. The originium in her body caused a mutation that made that tail grow way bigger than it was meant to. Speaking from experience, that growth hurts, and it probably will until it's reached its full size. Even still, it's important that you tell me these things. As a doctor, if I'm going to give you adequate care, I need to know. That's fair. There were more important things, you know? I didn't want to waste anyone's time worrying about me. With my hands clean, I threw on some sterile gloves, giving myself one final look over to make sure I didn't track any dust in here with me. You're a good person, Provence. You give so much of yourself for others. You deserve some of that care too, though. Don't forget that. He shook his head softly, checking the pulse of one of the more severely injured folks, originium jutting out of their jaw like a crystalline beard. Their case was especially acute, and I was worried for them. Adequate care was possible, but not as long as we were stuck here. At the very least, we can start you on some mild painkillers. A pressure cuff, please. I grabbed the pressure cuff off a nearby table and brought it over as he started jotting down his observations. As soon as I arrived, he snatched it from my hands and began checking their blood pressure. With that, we fell into a sort of rhythm, working together as efficiently as we could to monitor our patients' conditions and address any problems that arose. With a bit of prodding, Dr. Hendricks convinced me to snag some over-the-counter pain meds, and I promised I'd take them regularly until my tail grew in. However long that would take. With our continued steady effort, time flew by, and it was dinner before I knew it. This was going to go well. Just shut up and look pretty, right? Ugh. How could someone so gruff and reserved be so smooth? Did she even realize it? Whatever. Scavenger had to come clean, and I had to be there. She was trying to do the right thing, and I needed to make sure the others remembered that, even if I was a little grumpy about it, too. Jess and a few of the volunteers cooked canned soup in bulk tonight, and I grabbed myself a bowl before taking a seat at one of the tables we'd set up nearby. Once we realized we'd be here a while, we ended up dragging over some stray lawn furniture to go with the cheap tables and folding chair we brought in the trucks. Through the use of a pressure washer and a lot of protective gear, we'd managed to clear the originium out of the immediate area and off of the furniture. I was sitting in our usual spot, so it was no surprise when Eric took a seat next to me a few minutes later, or when Jess, finally free of food prep, dropped in afterwards. It was quite a bit later, when I was already halfway through my food, that Scavenger found the courage to show up. Her beanie was gone, and a jagged, fraying hole had been cut into her pants, letting her skinny tail out from its former confinement. As soon as I saw her, I waved, offering what I hoped was a reassuring smile. She tensed up when I did, moving almost mechanically as she grabbed her soup and took a seat across from me. Maybe she didn't want me calling attention to her. She seemed nervous, after all. Hey, Prof. Hey, Eric. Hi, Jess. She started out just shy of her neutral tone, but with each name she grew quieter, curling in on herself more and more. Out of the corner of my eye, I could see the wide-eyed stares of the other two locked on to either ears or tail. I made a point not to, glancing briefly into her eyes instead. It's It's good to see you and stuff. She was caving under the attention, not just from Eric and Jess, but from the dozens of people around us. After all, even though most of us were infected by now, not a single one of us had progressed so far. She stood out, and her arrival had been met with a sudden, uncomfortable silence blanketing the camp. Hi, Haley. Eric recovered first, leader that he is. He sounded calm as ever, but there was something else as well. His posture seemed tense, guarded, and his narrowed eyes took on an accusatory glint. Mind explaining all this? I'm Scavenger. I was infected a while back, and I hid it because I like you because I like you idiots, and I didn't want to lose friends over this. She jumped right to the point, that subtle aggression somehow leaving her more comfortable than she had been. I had my suspicions about that fog, and that's why I tried to convince you to leave, but I couldn't be sure. That about cover it? If you really expected this, you should have told us. Maybe, but I didn't. Sorry, I guess. You guess? Yeah, People are dying, Haley. We are all infected with a deadly disease that'll kill us in a couple decades at most. And you can't even apologize properly? Eric's practiced calm was slipping fast, and Jess was still just sitting there, stunned. I didn't know. I thought it might be, but I didn't know. I didn't want to risk the first bit of stability I've had in years on a hunch. And Scav was escalating. Not exactly surprising, but not great either. Well, you're sure as hell risking it now. And then he turned away, leveling that fiery gaze on me. And what about you, Daniel? Did you know about this? She has nothing to... I want to hear him say it, Haley. My name is Province, and you need to back off. He looked like he was about to do the opposite, taking in a deep breath, so I continued. I didn't know, and I don't agree with Scavenger's actions, but I get why she did it. If you want to have this conversation in a productive manner, you need to back off. Go for a walk or something. Find yourself some empathy, and come back when you're ready to listen. I tilted my head to the crowded tables around us, all watching in rapt attention. Maybe without an audience next time. If nothing else, Eric was professional. As soon as I mentioned the people around us, his mask of calm confidence slipped right back on. Our arguing wouldn't do morale around here any favors, and considering how delicate things were already, he couldn't afford to lose his cool. Shit. You're right. He paused for a moment, shaking his head. You're right, Provence. We'll talk later. He stood, grabbing his dishes and casting a wayward glance towards Jess, who'd remained silent the whole time. You gonna be okay, Jess? Huh? She jumped a little in her seat, seemingly surprised at the acknowledgement. Yeah, I'm fine. I'll be fine. Okay. With that bit of awkwardness out of the way, Eric walked off. I had finished my meal and was about to do the same when Jess brought her focus back to the two of us. So, you're Provence. She nodded towards me. And you're Scavenger, right? She nodded towards Scav. I gave her a nod of my own, with Scavenger following suit. Huh. Just, huh? She was being weird. Well, it's just, I used to play Arknights, and Scavenger stood abruptly, her chair scraping loudly on the pavement. Not another word. They were both being weird, and apparently they were keeping me out of the loop, too. Scavenger just kind of stood there, watching Jess with a stare that could kill an elephant. Jess remained equally still, like a deer in the headlights. I, however, was just really confused. Hey guys, I'd actually really like to hear what Jess was going to say. I raised my hand slightly, and both of their gazes snapped to me. I was just going to say, she was talking slowly, picking her words with care, that I remember you both from from the game. You you worked together, and I thought it was just like a really wild coincidence that you're both here. Scavenger seemed satisfied with that answer, which meant that I certainly was not. That was maybe the most blatant lie I've ever heard, and I do intend to press one or both of you for answers in the future. In the interest of keeping the peace for now, though, I'll hold off until we get out of here. Jess seemed like she was going to respond, but one more glare from Scav sent her scampering away. Scavenger herself lingered awkwardly for another few moments before slinking off. Today was a lot for both of us, so she said she was going to be going to bed early. I, meanwhile, went back to the medical tent to round out my day, idly worrying about what Jess had meant to say, whether Eric and Scavenger would reconcile, and the looming threat of our dwindling food stores. Today had started so well, too. By the time I went to bed, I was exhausted, and for once I was looking forward to my dreams. At least on Terra, I had a tail to snuggle. I sort of hoped mine would start growing soon. In the canon of the Heir Apparent universe, because again, this is the Heir Apparent fanfic universe that a friend of mine created. Arknights is a game that existed but disappeared not long before the Cancer Rock from the game appeared on Earth. FG-6. Unexpected assault. Unfortunately, sleep offered no escape. My dreams were blurry and dark, barely comprehensible, and I woke up not to the warm light of the sun, but the silver glow of moonlight. An engine revved in the distance, and as it did, I realized Scavenger's bedroll was empty. As quiet as I could, I clambered out of the truck we'd been sleeping in. The other, which we had been using to store our continually dwindling food supply, was absent. Scav is the one with the cannon crush, yes. The crates of non-perishables now resting on the pavement where the truck had been. The engine in the distance growled aggressively, and it started to move away. My ears swiveled towards the sound as I tried to pinpoint the source. Wait. My hands flew to my head, though I already knew what I'd find. A pair of lavender triangular wolf ears stood tall on my head, both easily the size of my open hand. They were soft and pleasant to the touch, and I absolutely did not have time to think about them right now. I set off towards the sound at a run, boots crunching in the originium that still coated the ground. The dust had begun to coalesce recently, each particle of the stuff growing with time, merging with the other crystals around it, and assimilating any bug or plant unlucky enough to be caught within it. In a way, I was thankful for that. The sound of the truck's tires grinding through it made it all the easier for me to track. I caught up in a matter of minutes, and it was with some pride that I noted the chase hadn't left me winded at all. The truck was just trundling along through the empty streets, heading towards who knows where. I had a good guess as to who the driver was, and I knew she wouldn't do this without a reason. I also knew the only way I'd find out why was by asking. Listening has made you more confident in your own writing? Well, why? Because my writing is bad? Because mine's not very good? No, I am supremely confident. There are things I would do better, and I would do different if I wrote this now, but I still think it's pretty solid, so I'm glad that it helps you build your confidence and feel more comfortable giving it a go. I picked up the pace, gaining on the slow-moving truck. Before I had the chance to hesitate, I opened the back door and leapt inside. One notable thing about oropathy in the world of Arknights is that it can and does infect animals, and usually causes them to mutate even more so than it does for humans. Was the person who made this verse a friend before or because of the fic? Neither, technically. The person who made this setting was not my friend prior to writing it, but we met through unrelated reasons. She and I are both members of a group called the Secret Trans Writing Lair, which is a group of exactly what it sounds like. A group of writers who are almost entirely trans, usually transgender women, who hang out, who support each other, who edit for each other and share ideas, and who occasionally do group bundles where we all write collaborative things that we put together in one like anthology. And she happens to be a part of the group. She was a part before I was, but I got invited, and I eventually met her through that group. And then it was like, hold on a second, didn't you write this story? Then she was like, yes, I did. Do you want to read some of the betas for other stories? And I was like, yes, I would. I picked up the pace, gaining on the slow-moving truck. Before I had the chance to hesitate, I opened the back door and leapt inside. Hey, Scaff, I said as I walked carefully towards the front. I saw the white-haired driver tense up when I spoke, and if I didn't know any better, I'd swear she yelped. Mind explaining what you're doing here? I plopped myself into the passenger seat, offering a smile that I hoped was reassuring. I wanted her to know I trusted her. I just wanted to know what she was planning. She spared a brief glance my way, grimacing slightly as she noticed my ears. Of course those would grow in tonight, she muttered angrily. Her fingers were tight around the wheel, and there were dark circles under her eyes. She looked exhausted. I'm going to solve our food problem. There's this small, local grocery store I saw towards the edge of town. It looks mostly intact, which means the food inside might not be too contaminated. Why didn't you tell? You know, everyone keeps asking that lately. She snapped at me, and I jumped in my seat. Sorry. Tired. Lots of feelings and shit. She took a deep, steadying breath. I only found out about it today. I was going to tell you guys at dinner, but then Eric got pissy and left, and Jess started making some assumptions, and I just really, really wanted that day to be over. So, why now? Couldn't sleep. Plus, I figured the best way to get back into Eric's good graces would be to solve our biggest problem. She was still clearly on edge. She kept glancing nervously in my direction, anxious for my reply. I'll help you then. If we both work together, maybe we can get back to camp in time for a nap. The ghost of a smile flickered across her face. Of course you'd say that. It wasn't even a whisper. It was a breath. I don't think she'd realized I'd heard. I can handle this. You should go get some sleep. You need your rest. Last I checked, so do you. Besides, I gave her a long look. I'm kinda already in the truck. That smile flickered again, stronger this time. Fine then. Let's get this done quick, you stubborn little wolf. Last I checked, I'm still taller than you. The smile persisted, although it suddenly seemed to take on a different aspect. She put the truck into park, turning in her seat and looking towards me. Not for much longer, by the look of things. All of a sudden, my heart was thundering in my chest, and I turned away, trying to look at anything but her. Admittedly, I wrote this story before I came to the enlightenment that is dominant Provence. And it was also at a time when I preferred writing stories from the sub perspective for reasons. Was she serious? Was I going to be shorter than her? I searched frantically through what few memories I had and came up blank. Why did the thought of that make me panic so much? She just laughed, a low, quiet chuckle. We're here, by the way. Let's get to work. Right. Let's do this. I climbed out of the truck quickly, eager to escape Scav's piercing gaze, and got my first look at what we were dealing with. It was roughly as Scavenger had described. Fairly wide, squat building, dusted lightly with flecks of originium. Crucially, though, the walls still stood, and the windows remained intact. It was practically a miracle. Even though the store was on the smaller end when compared to chain establishments and the like, it almost certainly held enough cereal, protein bars, canned goods, and other non-perishables to last us another week or two. If the quarantine was somehow still in effect by then, we'd be dealing with much bigger issues. As I appraised the situation, Scavenger simply walked up to the nearest window, took out her crowbar, and smashed it in. She climbed inside, her thick gloves and sturdy boots providing protection from the broken glass. A few moments later, I followed suit. We walked towards the entrance together, and as she grabbed a cart to begin looting the place, I unlocked the doors, dragging over a pair of small, dusty shelves to prop them open. After that, I grabbed a cart of my own, and the two of us began systematically working our way through the store, loading our carts up as much as we could, unloading them in the truck, and returning once again to start the process over. I was raiding the candy aisle, not intending to take much, but wanting something to surprise the kids back at camp when I heard it. It was almost like the truck, a constant, uninterrupted grinding sound as something slid or rolled across the crystals. But there was no engine accompanying it. There was a strange wetness to it as well, lending the sound a slimy, fleshy feeling. Something about it sounded familiar. I found myself reaching for a crossbow I didn't have. Scav? I spoke loudly enough to be heard, but some familiar instinct kept me from shouting. Her head peeked into my aisle, a question on her lips. Then her ears twitched, and I knew that she'd heard it too. Back to the truck, Provence. Now. But the food will be here tomorrow. She drew her crowbar again, walking over and grabbing me roughly by the arm. The camp is asleep, and we didn't post guards, and that's my fault. I should have known better. If there's one slug, there's more, and I'm not going to let another one of my mistakes get people hurt. I allowed her to guide me towards the store's entrance, not knowing the full extent of what those slugs were, but understanding enough to know they were probably dangerous. We had to warn the others. Even still. Stop blaming yourself, Scav. We're all stressed, and sometimes we make mistakes. Just do what you can right now, and do even better in the future, okay? She gave me an odd look at that, but whatever she was thinking, she decided not to say it. It was at that point that our mysterious, sluggy visitor made itself known. I don't know what it was that drew it to us. Maybe it was the sound of the engine, maybe it could sense our warmth, or maybe we were just unlucky. Regardless, it was there, right between us and the truck. And as we stepped out into the open air, I began to pick up on more sounds, more slugs somewhere in the distance. Slugs, for those unaware, are what happens when an insect becomes infected with oropathy. They become weird mutant slug things, with a variety of shapes. The slug before us was massive as far as slugs go, though still rather small compared to a human. A slimy red mass with glistening spikes of originium jutting out of its round, shapeless body. It quivered slightly in the cool night air, pausing for just a moment before making a beeline for Scav and I. Fortunately, it was pretty slow, trundling along in our direction. Without a moment's hesitation, Scavenger strode forward to meet it, dodging a jab of its crystalline spikes before slamming her crowbar into its side. Again and again she struck it, shattering crystals and piercing gooey flesh until eventually it went still. Unfortunately, dispatching the first took long enough that by the time it was dead, 3 more had taken its place, with more sliding, grinding sounds on the horizon. This was bad. Thinking quickly, I darted back into the store, grabbing a kitchen knife and ripping it out of its packaging before sprinting back out to join the fray. By the time I returned, the first 2 slugs had reached Scav. She was keeping them at bay fairly well, but there were already more on the way. She wouldn't be able to keep this up for long. I clutched my knife tightly as I... So here's just a silly fun fact for you all that I included as a little thing in the game. The actual gameplay of Arknights is a tower defense. It is a tower defense game, right? Scavenger is what's called a vanguard. When she deploys, she gets you more of the currency to deploy more units. She is solid early on in the game, early on in a fight. A physical blocker, And quite notably, she can block up to 2 enemies at once. And so I had 3 slugs coming at her, because that's the exact amount that overwhelms her in gameplay. Similarly, Province in the game is a sniper who uses a crossbow and is pitifully weak in melee. So anyways, she's got a knife now. By the time I returned, the first 2 slugs had reached Scav. She was keeping them at bay fairly well, but there were already more on the way. She wouldn't be able to keep this up for long. I clutched my knife tightly as I... Stay the hell back, Prov. She darted to the side, dodging a sudden lunge. In one swift movement, she turned, putting her whole body into a single heavy swing, crushing it against the pavement. I've got this handle, just get to the damn truck. Right. The sooner we were in the truck, the sooner we could get out of here. I just had to trust that she knew her limits. That's what I thought, at least, but I couldn't have been more wrong. In the half-second she'd been distracted by me, one of the slugs had slipped out of her sightline, reeling back to attack her from behind. I acted before I realized what I was doing, charging the slug with every ounce of my new lupine speed. I reached it the very moment it struck, ramming my knife into its soft body right as searing pain exploded in my shoulder. I cried out, staggering backwards as blood gushed from the wound. Provence. The pain in Scavenger's voice made it sound almost like she was the one who'd been struck. She grabbed my uninjured arm and pulled, yanking me out of the way of yet another slug I hadn't noticed. The world passed by in a blur, the crunch of boots on crystal and the squelching of slimy monsters eventually giving way to doors slamming shut and an engine roaring. I was in the passenger seat of a truck, and I was beginning to feel dizzy. My shoulder hurt really bad, and when I touched it, my hand came away red and sticky. I was really tired. More than anything, I wanted to go to bed. I leaned back, letting my eyes drift shut. Then I lurched forward as the truck came to a sudden stop. Shit, Provence, I need you to look at me, okay? Look at me. Keep those eyes open. The voice sounded muffled, but familiar. I didn't want to disappoint it. My eyes slid open, and I smiled drunkenly as I realized who was speaking. Hamelin, my little street mouse, with her white hair and cute ears and perpetually grumpy face, was leaning over me, pressing one hand against my shoulder, while her other sat behind my head, angling my face towards her. I need you to stay awake for me, Prov. Please, just stay awake. I didn't understand what was so important about that. I was tired and in pain, and I knew that if I could just take a nap, it'd all go away. That's all I needed. Just a little bit of rest, then I'd be okay. Even still, Hamelin looked really upset. She was crying. I could count the number of times that had happened on one hand. It's okay, Hamelin. I slurred, reaching up with my free arm to clumsily rub her back. I'm really sleepy and stuff, but I'll try to stay awake for a little bit longer. Don't worry too much, little mousy. I tried. I really did, but I was just too tired. I don't know how long I lasted, but I fell asleep well before we got where we were going. FG-7. Fluffy Wolf. If you can't do your best, you can only be better next time. Every catastrophe messenger's heard it before. Most have said it themselves once or twice. It wasn't always those exact words, sure, but it was something close. It's okay if you messed up. It's okay if you weren't perfect. It's okay if you weren't fast enough. Just take what happened, take what you learned, and do better next time. It's meant to be comforting. It's meant to keep you motivated, and most of the time it works. It's a tough job. You can't always be looking back. Instead of lingering on the people you lost, on the ones you couldn't save, you look ahead, focusing on the people you can still reach. Context on what a catastrophe messenger is in the world of Arknights. They are scientists of varying sorts who specialize in predicting catastrophes and then warning people about them. Typically, the bigger cities can do that themselves, but for smaller settlements, for groups of nomads outside the city, they can't always do that. And so catastrophe messengers go out into the wilderness and they keep an eye out for signs of catastrophe, and they warn people, whoever they can, to get out of the way of it if one's coming. If you can give even one person a few minutes extra to prepare when a catastrophe's on the way, then it's worth it. But it all felt hollow now. I staggered back to the landship, went to the dorms, crawled into bed, and cried. People were dead today. People who'd been alive and ignorant less than a week ago were dead now. Children were dead now. I could still see their faces burned permanently into my mind, along with dozens of others I'd tried to block out. What could I do if people just didn't listen? What could I do if they simply refused to take the word of some delirious infected girl over their own leaders? What could I do better? What did being better tomorrow mean to the people dead today? I grabbed my bushy tail, pulling it tightly to my chest. It was smelly and matted after so long in the woods, but I couldn't even bring myself to care. I'd done nothing. I'd achieved nothing. When man-sized chunks of originium began raining from the sky, my efforts meant nothing. I just wanted to fade away. There was a gentle knock at the door, one which I pointedly ignored, turning away from the sound source. There was a slight hiss as the door opened anyway, and I felt the mattress shift as someone sat at the foot of the bed. Go away, Aya. She'd spotted me as I'd walked past the cafeteria earlier, but I'd ignored her when she called out. I didn't want to burden her. Oop, I just smacked the mic on accident. My apologies. I didn't want to burden her with this. I wasn't sure I wanted to be cheered up at all. Eventually, I was sure to just pack all these feelings away and go back to being the happy, peppy Provence that everyone knew. Damn, you smell even worse than I do. A distinctly not Aya-like voice said. It's a low bar, Provence. Scavenger, because there's no one else that could have been, leaned back, lying in my bed like she owned the place. Just got back from a mission, Scav. Trees don't have running water. True, she groaned, stretching her arms over her head, fingers accidentally brushing against my tail. She was really making herself comfortable, whether I liked it or not. It's just that normally you take a shower so fast that by the time anyone sees you, you smell like roses and lavender and look like you just came out of a doll box labeled Big-Tailed Lupo. Well, that's evocative. I just call it like I see it. I sighed, realizing that the Zalek woman had no intention of leaving. Is there a reason you're here, scavenger? That kinda depends on you. I felt the mattress shift slightly as she shrugged. Figured you might get hungry while you're brooding, so I grabbed a couple protein bars before I came. I heard the crinkle of a wrapper as she removed a protein bar from her pocket, opened it, and took a bite. They're on the little desk by the door. Well, all of them, but this one. There was a crunch as she took another bite. Is that all? Well, I mean, I also thought you might want to talk to someone, you know? Someone who's not trying to cheer you up or fix things. In case you want to, like, just get it out there or something. I paused. Did I want that? I wasn't sure what good it would do, but probably wouldn't make things worse. Scavenger was just about the last person I'd go to for this kind of thing, but she was here now and she wanted to help. Maybe I could just tell her what happened, and if she decided to be annoying about it, I could just kick her out after. I just got back from the worst catastrophe I've ever seen. Not because it was particularly big or deadly on its own, but because the settlement it hit refused to evacuate. I told them it was coming, and they just ignored me. I'd done plenty of crying before Scav arrived, so I didn't have any more tears in me. My voice just sounded dry and empty, completely devoid of feeling. One guy, I guess he was staring at me or something, saw the crystals at the base of my tail, and as soon as they realized I was infected, every shred of credibility I had went out the window. They laughed bitterly. Of course it did. It was a closed-off little fringe colony right on the border of Ursus. They'd never trust an infected. There was another crunch as Scavenger continued to devour the protein bar. You better not get crumbs in my bed. Wouldn't dream of it, princess. She was definitely getting crumbs in my bed. Anyway, by the time the catastrophe rolled around, these people had done exactly nothing to prepare. I took a deep breath as suddenly my body decided I could cry after all, trying to hold these feelings back while I finished the story. There was this family the first day I arrived. They had a daughter, little Ursus girl who thought my tail was the coolest. When I said she could touch it, she practically buried her face in the fluff. Okay, yeah. I'm gonna allow this auto mod through, just so everyone can see what was accidentally typed instead of crumbs. I was so confused for a second. Oh my god. Scavenger's doing what in the bed? Oh my goodness. We're in an intense emotional part. Focus up. Oh my god. Um when the catastrophe finally came and it was impossible to ignore anymore, I thought that maybe I could at least save one family. That maybe that girl would survive. By the time I reached their house, it had been crushed by the largest chunk in the whole meteor shower. I squeezed my tail so tight it hurt. I couldn't save anyone, Scav. They all died, and all I could do was watch. The dam broke and tears started to fall once again, soaking into the fur of my tail. Scavenger, for her part, finished off her protein bar before crawling up the bed to lie down beside me. She didn't touch me, but I could feel the heat of her on my back, the weight of her pressing down on the mattress. She let out a sigh as I continued to weep and sniffle beside her. Stop holding it in, Province. What? My voice was shaky and weak. I barely got the word out. You heard me. Stop holding it in. You're upset. You're angry. At the world, at yourself, at that big old hunk of rock that fell from the sky. Her hand brushed against my hair, her touch gentle and nervous, as though she was afraid I'd scold her for it. When I didn't protest, she grew more sure, running her fingers through my greasy, knotted hair. I know it's not really your thing, but you can yell if you want. You can scream and cry. You can punch a pillow, or you can punch me. With those twig arms of yours, you're not going to do much. You can trash this room if you want. And if you want to, I'll clean it all up so you can trash it again. You're angry, Prov. Let it out. Why? My voice was steadier now, clearer, confusion outweighing my distress. Because I like you, you purple idiot. I can't say that about a lot of folks, but I like you. You're really good to me, you know? Her hand paused in its ministrations, and for a moment there was no sound, no motion at all beyond quiet breathing and the steady rise and fall of our chests. She felt tense, and even without looking, I could tell there was more she wanted to say, that she was questioning whether she should. I used to like someone. I liked her a lot, actually. And not just in a friendly way. She was incredible, Provence. And for some reason, she actually liked me back. She actually gave a damn about me. And then I got infected. And then I got kicked out of our village, and then she died. You know what came next. I found work as a professional criminal, a hired thief, and a contract killer. And my new employees called me Scavenger. The name stuck. And when you finally found me, when you pulled me out of that, it became my new code name. Provence. That girl I cared about so much. That girl that you remind me of so strongly. That girl I used you so selfishly to remember. Who you're honestly so similar to, but so different from in all the ways that matter. She was the last person who ever called me my actual name. The last person I allowed to use that name. Her body sprung into motion once again, her hand fidgeting uselessly in my hair, her tail lashing side to side, her breath coming in quick, shallow gasps. The tension I'd felt before multiplied 1,000-fold as she struggled to say what came next. I like you, Vance, and not just in a friendly way. It's okay if you don't feel the same, but I really need to say it, and I'd be okay with you calling me Hamelin every now and then, if you want. I rolled over to face her, realizing with some surprise there was a slight smile on my face. I was still upset. I was still angry, just like Scav had said, but more than anything, I think I was amazed. I had never seen Scavenger make herself this vulnerable, not once, not to anyone. She was trusting me now in a way she hadn't trusted a single person in years. That was special. It meant something. I think that's the most I've ever heard you say in one go. I reached towards her as well, running my fingers through her ashy hair. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know if I feel the same way. I might, eventually, but I need to know you first. Really know you. Her face fell a bit at my words, but there was still hope and gentle kindness in her eyes, a softness to her expression I'd never seen before. She really was beautiful in her way. Her short, light gray hair, her slightly rounded, rat-like ears, her strength, both physical and mental, carved into her from her time in the streets. She was gorgeous, and someday I wanted to know her. Are you still willing to help me work some energy out? She nodded emphatically. Then I think, for tonight, I'm going to wash up and do some more brooding, if that's okay with you. I need some time to think about things. I'd like to meet you in the training room tomorrow, though. I've never been great in hand-to-hand, and I think you'd be a good teacher. Plus, it means I'll get to hit something, right? I think that might actually help. Okay. She sounded slightly out of breath, her voice quiet and rough, like she'd just run a marathon, like she'd been the one crying, like she'd just fought the toughest battle of her life. I'll be there. Thank you, Himmelin. They're so good. They're so good. All right, 2 chapters left. We're almost there. We're almost there. FG-8, Outrunning Catastrophe. As I began to drift back towards consciousness, I became aware of 3 important facts, one by one. First, I noticed the sunlight filtering into the room, noticeable even through closed eyes. Second, I realized that something big and fluffy was brushing gently against my legs, and strangely enough, I could feel it. Not just through my legs, but through the fluff itself. Is the stream going to be archived anywhere? It will be uploaded to the Flawless Fae VOD channel eventually. That will happen. There is a Flawless Fae VOD channel, by the way. Finally, I realized there was something on my arm. It was warm and soft and breathing gently. Himmelin. It had to be. My eyes fluttered open, and I was met with a sleepy, mousy face. I was in one of the cots in the medical tent, and Hamelin was sitting in a chair beside me, her hand in mine, her head resting close to my shoulder. She drooled a bit, and her hand was squeezing mine a bit more than was comfortable, but I didn't mind. She must have been really worried after what happened. Speaking of which, I felt weirdly fine. The shoulder I'd been jabbed in was a bit sore, sure, but an injury that bad, one that led to so much blood loss, should have taken weeks to heal this much. My guess is that changing from oropathy can heal you somehow. It's like how all my little aches and pains just kind of vanished as I grew more Provency. And I was definitely more Provency now. My tail was finally here. It was big and fluffy, and I reached down to pull it to my chest before I even realized what I was doing. It was maybe a foot or two shorter than I remembered, but that still meant it was far larger than most Lupo could ever dream of. When it finally grew to its full size, and I could start properly grooming it, it was going to be so perfect. My sudden motion must have startled Hamelin because her eyes shot open, and she sat bolt upright. After a moment's confusion, she gathered herself, and her gaze firmly locked itself to mine. "You're awake." Her voice was soft and breathless, like she couldn't even believe what she was seeing. "As of a few seconds ago, yeah." My words came out with a dry rasp to them, and as I tried to sit up, a wave of dizziness, nausea, and pain sent me collapsing back onto my pillow. Oh, no, 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 Province. Don't try to get up right now. She was still quiet, but there was a sense of urgency now. I didn't want to make her nervous, and honestly, my head was throbbing, so I allowed her to help me nestle back into a comfortable position. You've lost a lot of blood, Prov, and you've been out for the last 2 days. The doc was able to give you some fluids, but our medical supplies are in a pretty bad way right now. Just stay put for a sec while I go get him, okay? Okay, Hamelin. Her breath hitched as I said her name. You don't have to worry. I'm not going to try and sit up again. That sucked. You go grab Hendrix, and I'll be right here when you get back. I gave her a little smile, one that grew broader as I noticed her cheeks flush red. As she scampered off to tell the doctor, I found myself reflecting on my most recent revelations. On Terra, Hamelin was in love with Province, and when she confessed those feelings, I asked her to wait. That was Terra, though. Here on Earth, it seemed like she probably still felt the same, but did I? I told her I wanted to wait. I told her that I wanted to know her before I answered, but I knew her now. After months of living with her, I knew her. I knew how much she loved my cooking, and how religiously she saved her leftovers. I knew she maintained this rough, unapproachable exterior not because she didn't want friends, but because she was always so scared she might hurt them. That one day she might get angry and say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing, and the friends she tried to make would leave her. I knew she was an overprotective herbo who'd spend 2 straight days holding my hand, just waiting for me to wake up. I knew her, and I liked her. When we finally got out of this mess, and we would get out of this, I'd tell her. As she returned, doctor in tow, I made a silent promise to do just that. But first, I needed to get my strength up. Good morning, Provence. Dr. Hendricks smiled warmly at me as he approached. Although, technically, we're well into the afternoon now. Just going to check your vitals real quick, and then we can talk about getting you back on your feet. You lost a lot of blood, so the best thing for now is to make sure you get plenty of food and water, all right? Herbo is himbo, but girl, yes. I nodded silently as he wrapped a pressure cuff around my arm. As I began to really take in my surroundings, I started to notice that things had changed since the slug attack. More infected, with more injuries, dotted the room. And most of the people who were still on their feet were armed, Dr. Hendricks included. It looked like we found a new medic as well, as a white-haired Cautis woman, her rabbit-like ears nearly as long as her forearm, was flitting about the room, clipboard in hand. Michelle, Hendricks called, causing the mysterious rabbit's head to whip in our direction. Looks like your favorite patient is finally in the clear. She's going to need a lot of iron and protein to get that blood pressure back up, though. Would you mind grabbing some food for her? On it, Doc. She snapped a hasty salute before bounding out of the medical tent, ears flopping in the wind behind her. She was tall, awkward, and undeniably cute, but I had absolutely no clue who she was. Favorite patient? I asked, grabbing my tail for another hug as soon as Hendricks finished his examination. I'd really missed it after all. Right, you wouldn't know. He cleared his throat, stepping back from the bed. Unfortunately, that's not my story to tell, but don't worry. I'm sure Michelle will explain everything when she gets back. There are a lot of things she was worried she wouldn't get to tell you. With that mysterious statement out of the way, Dr. Hendricks excused himself to look after his other patients. With how quickly I'd healed my injuries, he expected I'd be back on my feet before nightfall, and ready to start working again within a day or two. That'd have to be good enough. So, Hamelin, what happened when I was out? I figured I should probably get appraised of the situation. Everyone arming up couldn't mean anything good, and the amount of severe infections around me was even more worrying. Short story, we're screwed. Her hand found mine once again, and she squeezed it tight. Long story, we're screwed because nobody knows how to handle originium cleanup on this scale. We're screwed because our infections keep getting worse, and that won't stop until we get out of here, but every last one of us is so covered in dust we'll never be allowed to leave. Power's running low, food will run out sooner or later, slugs show up every day, and there are infected wolves in the forest. Things went south real fast after you passed out, and I don't think most folks even know we're here. She shook her head, laughing bitterly. If only Amia and the doctor and all them were here, right? No way Rhodes Island would stand for this shit. It took me several seconds to find my words. I mean, I knew she wasn't very online, but this was on another level. Did she really not know? Can they not be decontaminated like with any other hazardous material? Sort of. They do have originium in their bodies as well, is the thing. And so this is maybe minor spoilers, but also good context. Those infected with oropathy have the infectious originium crystals growing in their bodies. The reason it becomes lethal is when those crystals start growing on and obstructing vital organs, or the blood concentration gets high enough that it clogs veins and arteries. Technically speaking, oropathy is not infectious as long as the infected person is still alive. The originium in the body is focused entirely on spreading within the body. And so it's only once it reaches that lethal stage that it becomes infectious to other people around the infected person. Having said that, there is a lot of fear around oropathy infection, especially in the world of Terra, in the world of Arknights. Originium is used as an analogy for a shit ton of things. Yes. So Arknights, especially the original Arknights, Enfield hasn't really gotten there yet, and I'm not sure it will. I like the story of the original Arknights game a lot better. But originium is used in metaphor for all sorts of things, from literally being a metaphor for HIV and AIDS, to racial discrimination, to environmental destruction. Because again, originium is used as like a fuel source by the people of this setting, and causing catastrophic environmental harm in the process. It's a really good catch-all tool for telling all sorts of relatively political stories, which is a really strong point of the writing, honestly. I think it's a great multi-purpose tool they've put in the setting to do that. Anyways, having said this, in this world, the United States government kind of has a vested interest in keeping quiet about what happened here, in keeping people from finding out that a catastrophe occurred, in keeping people from finding out that there is this massive vein of originium that is now forming in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. There's a lot of corporate shit that goes wrong in both the Heir Apparent setting and normal Arknights, and there's a lot of governmental shit that goes wrong in both of those as well. And so, essentially, all news of what happened here is being suppressed, and no one's being allowed out for that reason. The quarantine is essentially just a cover. And it's one that's sort of justified by the fact that at this point in the story, a lot of people don't really know much about why all this stuff. I wonder why it's happening in a small town in Michigan. Definitely not because I was born and raised in Michigan. Anyways. So that's why the lockdown is happening. It took me several seconds to find my words. I mean, I knew she wasn't very online. Oh, Rhodes Island, again, like I said, is a pharmaceutical company. It is the main group that you play as in the game. You play as the Doctor in Arknights, and you're one of the leadership of Rhodes Island Pharmaceuticals, which is a pharmaceutical slash paramilitary organization. Does it have anything to do with real life Rhode Island? No. It's just the name. But it is a pharmaceutical slash paramilitary organization that is staffed almost entirely by people infected with auropathy. Most of its leadership are infected, most of its members are infected, and the primary goal of Rhodes Island Pharmaceuticals is to find a cure for auropathy, as well as to improve the rights and well-being and safety of anyone who has been affected negatively by Originium, especially those infected. There's the last bit of context that I think you'll need for this story. Amia is another one of the leaders of Rhodes Island. And within this setting, Heir Apparent, Amia is a bunny girl. Heir Apparent, being the first story in this setting, is the story of how this world's Amia came to be. So, ta-da. Hamelin, you know Amia's back, right? She was one of the first infections on Earth. She and Calcit and a bunch of others have been trying to rebuild Rhodes Island. Now it was her turn to be speechless, mouth hanging open as she tried to process what I just said. She had raised a good point, though. If she knew about this, there's no way Amia would just leave us all to die. She'd find a way. Amia's back? I nodded. You knew? I nodded once again. Why didn't you tell me? Because I thought you knew, Scav. It was pretty major news when it happened. Amia made this whole live-streamed announcement and everything. Besides, until I started getting all these new memories, I had no reason to think you and Rhodes were related at all. It was at this moment that Michelle, the mysterious Cottis girl, returned, carrying soup, bottled water, and several protein bars. As she set all of it down on the collapsible table next to me, she began her stammered introduction. Hi, Provence. I know you probably don't recognize me, but my name is, Michelle. I really wanted to apologize to you because I've honestly been such a jerk. Oh, right, she was probably recently changed. I said some really awful things to you and Scavenger before, and I have this awful habit of taking bad jokes and pushing them too far, and then I hurt people and I hurt you, and then when I got infected, I just curled in on myself and didn't help anyone, and then you got stabbed trying to pick up everyone else's slack. She cut herself off, gasping for breath as she wiped newly formed tears from her eyes. You don't have to forgive me, but I want you to know I'm sorry. And I'm going to do better. Michelle, the one on Terra, is a lot like me, but she never did better. And she ended up alone. I'm not gonna let that happen here. That was all well and good, but there was still one glaring issue. I maybe got a little bit lazy with her name, I will admit. I appreciate that, Michelle, but it's like you said, I don't recognize you. How did you hurt me again? Right. Damn it. Sorry. Forgot about that. She took one last deep breath. My name is Michelle, but you knew me before as Michael. I was an asshole, and I'm sorry. Oh. Well, that certainly explained a lot, didn't it? What finally convinced you to come out of hiding? You did. A smile flickered across her face, vanishing moments later. When Scavenger got back, carrying you over here, she wasn't exactly quiet. When I saw you, when I saw what you were doing, what you'd been through, all for the sake of people like me, I never would have forgiven myself if I didn't at least try to help. Well, thanks. I shot her a smile of my own. I don't know if we're ever going to be best friends, but it's good that you're trying. You were pretty hard to be around, you know? Yeah, I know. She unwrapped one of the protein bars before placing it delicately into my hand. Now, eat up. You'll need your strength if you're going to save us, after all. That last part did something to Hamelin, who shot to her feet, eyes practically glowing with white-hot rage. She's done enough. She moved close to Michelle, somehow staring down at the goddess woman despite being several inches shorter. She's given enough, and it got us nowhere. She needs rest, and I'm not going to let you force her to push any harder. Got it? She is, yeah. That is the same from earlier. Michelle, for her part, stayed calm, barely even flinching at the unconstrained fury in front of her. I'm not going to force her to do anything. She met Hamelin's eyes with her own, her steely gaze unwavering as she held her ground. I wouldn't. Not ever. But you know her as well as I do. Better, even. I never met her on Terra, but if she's anything like the person I knew here on Earth, she's already working on a plan to get us out of this. The strangest thing is, she was right. Final chapter. FG-9, Message to Rhodes. A couple days later, I was mostly recovered. Whatever it was about Earth's oropathy that caused it to heal injuries and pain was still affecting me, so I was able to get back on my feet pretty quickly. That was good. I needed to get moving as soon as possible if the more acutely infected were going to survive. I'd been thinking things over while I was stuck in bed, and I was pretty sure I could get us out of this. I just needed to pitch it. That's why I gathered together all the members of MLR for a talk. We all know no one is coming for us, right? There were grim nods all around. And that just means we need to save ourselves. Here's how I see it. The soldiers have cordoned off the affected area and are somehow blocking communications to the rest of the world. It makes sense in a twisted kind of way. They don't know how to handle it, and the best solution they could come up with was to just lock us up. Maybe if they outsourced things to a company that works with Originium or called in Rhodes Island, things would be different. But it would also make it painfully obvious that the government is completely unprepared to deal with this stuff, so they're just going to cover it up instead. If we want to be saved, all we need to do is go public. And how do you propose we do that without a cell signal? Michelle tilted her head inquisitively. How indeed? Hey, Scav, you're familiar enough with my work. How did we do it back on Terra? How did we warn the villagers and nomads who weren't so connected? Hamelin thought for a moment, then her eyes grew wide. Provence, no. You've only just recovered, and there are infected wolves and armed soldiers in your way. You are not doing this. I am, Hamelin. I reached out and took her hand in my own, gently rubbing her knuckles with my thumb. I'm not just going to sit here and wait for us all to die. I can help people, so I will. That's who I am, you know that. I turned to face Eric, who was watching us both with concern. I need a crossbow, a few days' rations, a phone with as much documentation of what's going on here as possible, a charger, and the cleanest clothes we have. I'll breach the QZ through the woods and circle around to the closest town outside the catastrophe's path. Then I'll call Rhodes. The guards will find out, Prov. They'll have motion sensors, trail cams, armed patrols. And they won't catch me, Eric. They can't bring their trucks into a dense forest like this, and no human could ever match a Lupo on foot. Just like no wolf or dog could outclimb me, outsmart me, or evade my bolts if it came down to it. If anyone has a chance of doing this, it's me, so please let me do my job. I gave Hamelin's hand a little squeeze as Eric sighed heavily. You're sure? Absolutely. Then get ready to leave. Then I'll get what you need. Be ready to leave tomorrow morning. Yes, sir. Hamelin didn't exactly take the news well. To her credit, she was able to hold it together until the others left. Aside from squeezing my hand in a death grip, that is. As soon as we were alone, though, that changed. I won't let you do this, Prof. Her voice was cold and quiet, and in her eyes I saw a volatile mix of fear and anger. But you're not going to stop me. The only other choice is a slow death, and I don't want that. She leaned in closer to me, staring me dead in the eyes. Her voice dropped even lower, just barely audible to my wolfy ears. I know you lied to Eric. You're not as strong as you're pretending you are. I can see it. I know you. I can see how you still get dizzy when you stand up too fast. I can see how tired you are every day. And I know for a fact you aren't as fast as you say you are. Not in this condition. She took a deep breath. I know that nothing I say will change your mind, but I am asking you, please, just wait. Take a few more days, build your strength back properly, then do what you have to do. I know how much this means to you. I know how much you care, and I know how far you're willing to go, but I won't let you kill yourself over this. People will die if I wait, Hamelin. More will die if you rush this. Another deep breath. You have no idea how hard it is for me to keep it together right now, Prov. Don't go. Please. Damn it, Scav. You're right. I'm not at my best. And if I leave tomorrow, I might die. Rushing this would be an awful idea. You're also right that you're not going to change my mind. I'm leaving tomorrow because if I don't, it practically guarantees the death of all our most severely infected, and I wouldn't be able to live with myself if I let that happen. You can come with me. I cut her off. You can't come the whole way. You aren't as fast as me, and as soon as I trip the motion sensors, I'll need to run. But until then, you can stick close and watch my back. Alone, I'd really struggle, but the two of us against one pack of infected wolves won't even be a fight. Come with me. Keep me safe till we reach the border, then let me finish this. She released my hand, gritting her teeth as her tail flicked erratically behind her. A moment passed, then another. Fine, you fluffy idiot. You better pull this off, though. Got it? I stood up, pulling her into a tight hug. Got it. With that, the two of us parted ways for the night. Hamelin setting off to inform Eric of her intentions while I tried to get some more rest. Even if I couldn't be running at 100% tomorrow, I wanted to be as close to it as I could. Of course, with how nervous I was, it wasn't easy to relax. For the first time since I'd been infected, I passed through the night in a dreamless sleep. I was up before the sun rose and ran a final check on all my equipment. I'd bathed myself a few minutes prior with a cloth and a couple bottles of water. It wouldn't do for me to spread dust and crystals outside the QZ. I needed to save the people stuck here, but I didn't want to endanger those outside either. The crossbow I'd been given was simple and sturdy, with few moving parts to potentially break or fail. I had about 15 bolts on me, and unless things went terribly wrong, that ought to be plenty. Scav had geared up as well, with a machete hanging from her belt. I don't know where she got it, but it was definitely a bit smaller than what she used on Terra. Oh, I don't know where she got it, and it was definitely a bit smaller than what she used on Terra. It is thundering out. But it was definitely an upgrade from her old crowbar. We didn't sing much that morning. Breakfast was quiet and somber. By now, everyone knew what I was going to do. We all knew I might never see any of them alive again. I sat close to Hamelin, her warmth, her strength, her scars that so very few people got to see. Those signs of a life lived, they made me feel strong. They made me believe we could do this. The sun rose, and I squeezed Eric, then Jess, then even Michelle in tight hugs. Hamelin didn't but she made a point to say goodbye to them all, and from her that still meant something. We were running just a little bit behind, but it was worth it to say goodbye. Then we left. We ran into a couple slugs on the way out of town, but we were ready for them this time. And now that I had a crossbow, I could finally be a real asset in a fight. In a matter of minutes, the two of us had cleared out the group that attacked us, and once I retrieved my bolts, we passed the rest of our walk out of town in peace, the silence only broken by the crunch of crystals beneath our feet, and the wind. My goodness. And the wind whistling through the empty streets. The forest was much the same. It was eerily quiet, with no bird song or buzzing bugs. The crystal hadn't spread as much here, but it was still slowly creeping outward. The trees and ferns and flowers would all be consumed or assimilated, and what animal life there was had either perished, been infected, or knew better than to stick around. We walked and walked and walked until the sun was high in the sky, and then we broke for lunch. We were right on the edge of the QZ now. The crystals hadn't spread this far yet. There was dust, sure, but not much of it. I'd have to set out alone soon. Then Scav would go back to camp, and I'd be on the run. I started gnawing on the jerky I'd brought with me, trying not to think too hard about that when I heard a growl. A wolf with a black coat was watching us, hunched down in the undergrowth just outside the clearing. My crossbow was in my hands in an instant, and Hamelin quickly moved to place herself between me and the infected animal. Without warning, we were being charged full speed, but it wasn't by the wolf we'd seen. While we'd been distracted, another one had circled around and was rushing us from the side. "On it," I called out, pivoting to meet the new threat. My first shot rammed into its shoulder, causing it to yelp and stumble. By the time it recovered, I'd already reloaded my weapon, and my second shot struck its throat. It dropped. As I was dealing with that, 2 more wolves had come barreling towards Hamelin, who was fending them off with her usual mix of graceful agility and feral aggression. I loaded another bolt, stepping to the side to ensure Hamelin didn't get caught in the crossfire. Firing! My bolt pierced its heart just as Hamelin finished the third. More eyes were watching us from beyond the tree line. More throaty growls were sounding from the left as leaves rustled and branches snapped to the right. It wasn't just wolves, either. The steady, slick, sliding sound of a horde of slugs was steadily closing in. Wolves we could handle, but this was too much. We couldn't beat them all at once. I could probably outrun them, but Hamelin... Go, Province. But just do it, now. Or did we hike all this way for nothing? Damn it. Hamelin. 3 weeks from today. Coffee on me. It's a date, so don't you dare stand me up by dying, Hamelin. Before I could think too hard about it, I darted up behind her, pecked her on the cheek, and ran away as fast as my legs could carry me. I ran, and I didn't stop. By the time I was sure the wolves weren't following me, I'd cleared the last of the dust, which meant that every step ran the risk of tripping an alarm. My only option was to run, and keep running until nightfall. Thankfully, even if I wasn't as strong or as fast as normal, my stamina had bounced back pretty quickly. I kept moving, and when night fell, I climbed a tree, ate my dinner, and slept uncomfortably until dawn. Once again, I was up before the sun, and I wasted little time as I climbed down the tree, snacked on some trail mix, and started jogging through the woods. It was only after 2 full days of jogging and hiking that I found my first signs of civilization. A long, 2-way road was winding its way through the forest. Was that a page-turning sound? So I have a completely unrelated book in my hands that I've been flipping pages from and tapping paper on this whole time. For immersion's sake and for ASMR's sake. A long 2-way road was winding its way through the forest. What book is it? This is Fire, the second book in the Graceling series by Kristen Cashore. It's a book series that I really loved in high school, and I occasionally reread every now and then. I followed it, keeping the road in sight without stepping fully into the open. A few times, my ears would twitch as I picked up on the sound of an engine approaching. Every time, I would hurry deeper into the forest before dropping flat, waiting for it to pass. Eventually, after yet another day of travel, I finally found what I was looking for. There was a town. It wasn't exactly huge, but according to some folks from Backerville, it was home to a small, family-owned coffee shop. That was my target. I changed clothes in the woods. We'd stored the cleanest clothes we could find in a sealed plastic bag before I left, and I wanted to reduce the risk of exposing anyone to Originium as much as possible. I also swapped my hiking boots for some proper running shoes. My tail was much too big to hide, and the soldiers would definitely be watching this place. I needed to get to the coffee shop, plug in my phone, and call Rhodes as quickly as possible. Otherwise, I'd be detained before I could get the word out. With fresh clothes on and phone in hand, I started running once again. I knew roughly where I was going, and that would have to be good enough. As long as I could get close, I was hoping I'd be able to catch the scent of fresh coffee and follow that the rest of the way. I definitely drew some stares as I went. That didn't matter right now. I wasn't trying to hide. Quite the opposite, in fact. I wanted people to see me, because the more I stood out, the harder it would be to just bury all of this if I disappeared. Besides, the civilians weren't the concern. All that mattered was that I finished this before the army caught wind. Speaking of wind, after about 4 minutes of breakneck sprinting, I finally caught the scent I was looking for. 2 minutes after that, I was pushing through the front doors and making a beeline for the nearest outlet. "I'm a friend of Alyssa's, she's in danger, and I need to make a phone call," I hollered over to the man running the counter. Alyssa was one of the folks from Backerville, and she's the one who suggested this place to begin with. Apparently she knows the owner's daughter. "You what? What's going on? Who are you?" he called back. "I'll explain in a sec, but I really don't have time right now. Please just trust that this is important." I didn't wait for an answer. I was already plugging in the phone. As soon as it started up, I went online, found the contact info for Rhodes, and made the call. It rang once, twice. Click. "You've reached Rhodes Island. Leonhardt speaking." Well, wasn't that a coincidence? A fellow catastrophe messenger on the other end. I really wanted to catch up, but there were more important things to take care of. "Hi, Leon. I'm calling to report a catastrophe." I told Leon everything, and he helped me dump all the records and photos and evidence of what had happened onto Rhodes' network. Not a moment too soon, either. Moments after the last file was uploaded, a group of 5 soldiers came bursting into the shop. I didn't resist, but they were still a good deal rougher than they needed to be when they pinned me to the table and put me in cuffs. Leonhardt. Leonhardt is a catastrophe messenger in Arknights. I was scared, really ludicrously scared, but I'd expected this. I knew from the moment Hamelin and I had left that this would end with me either dead or imprisoned. That didn't make it any less awful, though. I don't know where I was kept, but it was dark and lonely, and I only had the guards to keep me company. They couldn't risk putting me in a proper prison after all. I knew too much. All it would take was a few words to the right person, and this whole fiasco would be exposed to the world. Of course, I'd already made those words happen, but they just didn't know it yet. After a number of days that I couldn't quite place, less than a month, but more than just a week or two, I was released. On very tight conditions. Rhodes Island was still growing on Earth. They didn't have the same power they did on Terra, so there was no way they'd be able to strong-arm a country like the US. That didn't mean they didn't have bargaining power, though. They knew what happened, and they had proof. If they went public with it, it would prove without a doubt that our government officials were completely unprepared to deal with catastrophes. So they used that to strike a deal. We'd keep our mouths shut, for now at least. In return, Rhodes Island would be put in charge of the Backerville QZ, as well as any other affected regions. All the infected within those areas would be placed in Rhodes Island's care, and so long as I agreed to the gag order, they'd let me go. It was far from a perfect solution, but it was better than just waiting to die. And I'd much rather that Originium be in Rhodes Island's hands than that of the military or some faceless corporation. There was a car waiting for me at the gates of whatever military base I'd been kept in, driven by a Cautus man I didn't know. It was a bit uncomfortable. Car seats weren't really made to accommodate a tail, much less one as large as mine, but I was too caught up in the fact that I was finally really free to notice. After hours and hours of coasting down the highway and a few more hours riding through wooded back roads, we arrived at a turnoff marked with a large sign, Rhodes Island Pharmaceuticals. My floppy-eared chauffeur followed the signs until eventually we arrived at a large brick building, accented with blue and white, with the blue and white colors of Rhodes Island I remembered from Terra. There were a few people milling about outside, most of whom I didn't recognize, but there was a sense of familiarity in being here. The Rhodes Island logo plastered all over, the infection monitors on everyone's wrists, the floppy ears, hovering halos, and tails in every shade and shape. It felt like home. I climbed out of the car, following the Cautus man through the front doors of the facility, where I was almost immediately tackled with a hug. "You stood me up." Ameline's voice was slightly muffled as she buried her face in my hair. It felt like she was going to break my ribs with how tightly she was squeezing me. "You asked me out, and you stood me up. What the hell, Province?" She was crying, but she was also very obviously trying to hide it. Still trying to keep up that tough rat persona, I guess. Oh well. I hugged her right back, my giant feather duster of a tail wagging up a storm behind me. "You're right, Hamelin. That was pretty awful of me, huh?" I giggled softly as I turned my head, giving her a quick peck on the cheek. "Is there any way I can make it up to you?" She leaned back, trying to subtly wipe away the few stray tears from her face. She sniffled, very dignified, very discreet. "You can follow me to the medical bay, so we can get your physical done. Then we get some coffee. Then you let me fluff your tail. Do that, and we're even." I smiled wide as I stepped back, tail still motoring away with excitement. "All right, then. It's a date." And that's the end of Fluff and Garbage. That's the end. I have my own stories in the Heir Apparent universe that I intend to follow this up with eventually, but I have other priorities right now. But yeah, eventually I have plans to write a prequel story to this one following Hamelin. I also have plans for a story following another one of my favorite Arknights characters, Cert, who I think will be really interesting in the Heir Apparent universe. So, yeah. I hope you all really enjoyed. I had fun. My voice is a little tired, so I think I'm probably going to have to tell the patrons that they'll be getting their early access audio a day late because my throat's a little rough for further recording today. But that's a story that I'm quite proud of. That's one that I really enjoyed writing, and I'm really glad I got the chance to share it with you all today. Oh, well, thank you. Now, with all of that said and all of that done, let's find someone to raid out to, shall we? Let's find someone to say hi to. You know what? It's been a bit since we've raided to Mindful Mess. Do you want to go say hi to her? You want to go say hi? Let's go visit. Let's go visit. Oh, of course, Elizabeth. I'm glad you enjoyed. I always get a little nervous when I'm sharing my writing, but Yeah, I'm really glad you all liked it. This is a really enjoyable experience to get to read this for all of you. So we're gonna head out in 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1.